Today's date is Thursday, January 11th, 2024. We'd like to welcome a new staff member, Judy Vogel, and this is mainly for the Planning Commission too. She's going to be the new transcriptionist for our meetings, so we'd like to welcome her. Mikkel's here training her. And tonight we'd like to excuse Dustin Little. He's out of town, and Member Miller should be here later. I've asked Member Stevens to give a word of prayer, and then if you could all rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Heavenly Father, as we meet this evening at our Planning Commission meeting, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to live here in this valley. We're grateful to all the blessings that we receive and the joys that we have in our lives. We pray for Thy Spirit to be here with us this night and help us and those who are in attendance to be able to voice their opinions and things that they have on their minds, and we'll be able to control our attitudes and tempers. We pray that Thou help us to be guided in what we do to make good and correct decisions which will benefit those who live here in this valley. Grateful for all Thou does for us. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have the approval of the agenda.
So
Do I have a
moved.
motion? Motion by Member Stevens. Have a second? A second by Member Wilson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Declaration of conflicts of interest with any items on the agenda from the Planning Commission. Nope, seeing none. We'll move on to public comment at this time. We have one administrative item, and that's the Riverbend Estates Small Subdivision. That does not have a public hearing attached to it since it's administrative, so if you have a comment about the Riverbend subdivision, now will be the time for you to come up and address the Planning Commission. Or if you have any other item that you would like to talk about, a future item you'd like us to consider going on in the county, you can come up now and talk to us. However, items 7, 8, 9, and 10 and 11 are legislative items, and they each have their own public comment period. So if you have a comment about the rest of the meeting, any of those agenda items, we ask that you reserve the time till its individual public hearing. So now is the time for public comment. Okay, last call. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our agenda item number 6, discussion, public meeting decision, Riverbend Estates Small Subdivision.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Item number 6 on tonight's agenda is for application number 23.087. This is the Riverbend Estates preliminary and final plat subdivision, of which the concept plan was approved by the zoning administrator later in 2023, and is now before you tonight as a application again to subdivide into preliminary and final plat approval. The applicant is D.D. Pace. The project location is approximately 250 West Richville Lane. The zoning is split between RR1 in the front and A20 towards the rear of the property. The acreage is 14.1 acres total, and the request is approval of a 7-lot subdivision. Just to note, Commissioner members, this is a resubmittal, a completely new application from an item you would have heard within the last year and a half, I believe. There are no comments from the county engineer, county surveyor, fire, and comments and the process with Weber Morgan Health has all been completed. They're okay specifically with septic systems. I know that was a point of discussion again earlier in older applications. One of the exhibits in your staff report closer to the end will be the conditional access permit from UDOT. Again, that's effectively stating that they will approve this project upon approval from this body and subsequently the county commission is what I should have said. All in all, staff is recommending approval of this application. I, along with Josh, can answer any questions you may have, and the applicant and her husband are in the audience tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any questions for staff? At this time, Planning Commission?
Do you know when they went through the rezone?
A rezone? No, I don't know that. No. Again, A20. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
Part of the tunnel zoning.
Yes.
Any more questions for staff? Okay. Anything for the applicant? Do you have a question?
No, we could hear. We could go into public hearing.
This isn't a public hearing. This is just administrative, so we're,
Okay, then can you pull up the map, the zoning map?
This isn't a rezone. This is an administrative item. The tunnels,
But I was,
yeah.
like, I know what it is. I just want to
Okay.
see what the zoning is.
The tunnel zoning, they have over 7 acres within tunnel zoning, which means they can have at least 7 lots.
Oh, because they have it in this side and that side.
Yeah.
Oh.
They've met all of our requirements. They've met UDOT requirements. It's an administrative item.
okay, any questions for staff or the applicant? If not, I'm ready for a motion. If you can find it. Page 9.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the Riverbend Estates preliminary and final plat application 23.087, allowing for a 7-lot subdivision of land located at 250 West Richville Lane based on the findings and with the conditions listed in the staff report.
I have a motion by Member Bass. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Stevens. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is the first one and under legislative discussion, public hearing, decision, Guffey rezone.
Madam Chair, item number 7 is a legislative action for application number 23.089. The applicant is Tom Guffey. The location is 4964 South Highway 66. Current zoning is A20 with the general plan designation as agriculture. The acreage is 10 acres, 10.0 acres. And the request is to rezone from A20 to RR5 with a subsequent future land use map amendment from agriculture to ranch residential 5. Date of the application is November 30, 2023. Staff has reviewed this request for a rezone and future land use map amendment and find that it meets all minimum code requirements for, again, a rezone and future land use map amendment for the following reasons. First, the property is non-conforming. There are two primary dwellings on one parcel within the county, and they both have different addresses. And second, the subject property is close in proximity to the end of the tunnel zoning found commonly around the county on, well, South Highway 66, Morgan Valley Drive, etc. There are no comments during the review process from the county attorney, and the staff is recommending approval of this request for rezone, future land use map amendment. Just to make you aware, the motions are not correct in the staff report. I've placed a sheet on your desks to help you with the motions. I, along with Josh, can answer any questions that you may have, and the applicant is in the audience tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any questions for staff?
Can you pull up on the maps? I tried to do it earlier, but it kept sending me not to that address.
And you want to see the zoning map or the future land use map? Because that's what's on the screen.
It doesn't matter.
The zoning
Just
maps
like,
before
I'm
you.
just not sure where it's at.
Right, and it's hard to show on the map because proximity would kind of show the whole county. So again, you've gone to the very south end of Porterville, I suppose, and then you're on your way to East Canyon.
Right.
And this is the East Canyon retreat. There are a lot of resorts in the area, timeshares, other things. So that's the area where we're at. We can get you the full map.
Like
Just
when the
past
little
White's
white
Cross,
house-
White's Crossing.
Yeah.
Where is that from White's Crossing?
Further south, a little bit south, because that's where the tunnel zoning ends, is at White's Crossing, I believe.
Yep.
Is that down there the Lions Lodge?
Yeah, line's close by. Camp Sarah Hemla further north.
Well, Zarahemla is way back this way from
Yeah,
White's
it's way
Crossing.
north.
They're not even close. That's where it goes down and East Candy Creek comes underneath the old house.
That was my only question for right now.
Okay.
It's just in proximity to something I know where it was.
Looks like all the surrounding areas are 820.
Correct. There are a lot of non-conforming parcels in that area, and again, that's due to a lot of the. Again, there are some 1 acre lots in that area and otherwise. This subject property is 10 acres in a 20 acre zone.
And 2 residences.
Correct. 2 residences on the property.
Any other questions for staff, or do you have a question for the applicant?
Madam Chair, I move we go into public hearing for item number 7.
Okay, motion by member Bass to go into public hearing. Do I have a second? I'll take second by member Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're now in public hearing. If any of the public has a comment about the Guffey rezone, now's your time to come speak, and please state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name's Ryan Halverson. I represent Phil and Dion Halverson, who are property owners directly to the west, right along East Canyon Creek, right across the river from the Lions Club, right there. And so we are just a 3.5 acre parcel, so we are also in the same boat. So I guess we have some concerns. We understand why it needs to be rezoned as non-conforming with 2 dwellings. I guess we have a question of why they weren't forced to rezone it before they built the second dwelling. To be conformant, because it was the same zoning when they built that second unit. So it's a concern only that, our fear is that tunnel zoning extends, right? And then we end up with 10 buildings on that 10-acre lot directly adjacent. It's already being used as a timeshare. We as property owners have had some problems with that timeshare use, with trespassing and property damage and so forth. And so we have a concern if more units are built, you know. And obviously this isn't asking for 10 units to be built on that now, but our concern is that's the next step. And so we just want to, I guess, voice that concern, have that question of why were they not asked to rezone before building that other unit? Our fear is that might happen again, and then force your hand to rezone them to R1 because they built another unit on it, you know, and be conformant that way. And so that's our concern, is that that process just be followed correctly. Concern being septic systems, wells, the difficulty that already exists being right there along the river, a lot of hill, the property's a lot of hillside, not necessarily meant for development, which just makes that development more congested in that 10 acres. And so that would be our concern as adjacent property owners. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, ready for motion to go out of public hearing?
So move.
Motion by member Stevens.
Second.
I'll take a second by member Favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? Out of public hearing. So any questions for
Well-
staff or the applicant?
Do we know the history, like how they did get two houses on there?
Maybe staff can,
I have no history of how they were approved for 2 dwellings. My understanding is it's only been allowed 1 dwelling per lot. Aside from the internal accessory dwelling unit that would have been allowed, but that was approved just a few years ago. So you might want to ask the applicant how long ago the second dwelling was constructed.
Said 2010 in here, didn't
It's been a while. I don't remember the exact date.
it? I think in the our packet here it said 2010.
So almost 15 years.
Yeah, but that's recent.
would you like to have the applicant name?
I think they should.
Tom can come up. And state your name again for the record.
My name's Tom Guffey. The question?
How did we end up with 2 residences on the 1 parcel?
When we purchased the property, the zoning was 10 acres. We were issued a permit by the county, and we completed that. When we bought the property originally for a place to go and recreate, we built the cabin. The other reason we purchased it was to retire to. When that time came in our life, we applied for a permit. We was issued a permit, and we built the second dwelling. That was 14 years ago. It was inspected, and CO was issued by the county. And we moved in, lived there, and if I can address Ryan's concerns, there is no current plan in place to do anything more than we are doing now with the property, and that's to reside and enjoy.
Thank you. Any more questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Can you click on some of the other lots around? No, I'm good.
Does 4830 have a house on it? I can't really see or tell. Looks like it might.
Typically, if there's an address assigned, there is a structure there. I would imagine if it's got an address, there's a house.
There's, like, if I were to go 4910, that one doesn't look like it has a house. Oh, no, it does. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I guess my opinion is instead of going, like, to fix the problem, which is 2 houses on a parcel, I feel like the better option is to go to RR10. But,
There's only 10 acres total.
so I guess if we're looking to the future, they would get a rezone for RR5, split the parcel.
They have to come in
and
for
then be-
subdivision.
And then be conforming.
Yes.
And if we were to just leave it as is and leave it non-conforming, what happens? Is there anything that changes?
Nothing would change according to the use. They wouldn't be required to tear it down. The use of the property would stay the same as a non-conforming use, and non-conforming lot.
I mean, my only concern is that most of that looks like it's A20. If you were to put or RR5, then even if it wasn't that or specific lot, it would open it up in the future to, hey, as the concern was raised, to extend RR5 and RR1 just because you'd have a RR5 right all along the A20. The only question is if we just leave it as is, even if it's non-conforming, they still live there, it's still built, and there's still addresses. I don't see that it really needs to be changed in order to open that door of extending or extending a smaller zoning along that tunnel.
I don't know, is the ADU a option for them on this?
The detached accessory dwelling unit was approved, and so one of those would be considered a detached accessory dwelling unit. However, you still have the fact that all of the lots surrounding this, except for the major parcel to the north, as well as 1 or 2, are all sub 3 acres. And many of them are sub 1 acre. So the whole area is non-conforming.
Josh, how much footage or how many lots could they create in 1 acre tunnel zoning if it was changed to that? How much frontage do they got, you know?
I can do a measurement really quick. If you could correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Sessions, the tunnel zoning was typically 200 or 300 feet deep. Do you remember?
It should be about 300, but the line is kind of squiggly, so.
I believe it's 220.
Well, I don't think we have a set amount. That's been a discussion.
Let me
We
do
probably
this.
should. It should be big enough so that with 200 feet of frontage, you'd have 1 acre.
It's 300 feet there, so I'll use that.
I guess my question is kind of like Devon's, is there's nothing happening to it now. Like, they still have their 2 buildings. If we rezone to RR5, they still have their 2 buildings and nothing else would change.
They could subdivide and sell off one.
But as far as density, can be no more density.
Not with
Right.
RR5, no.
My concern with it is, the zoning was in place when they got the permit. Now, however they did that, I don't know. but they shouldn't have been able to get a permit to build the house to start with, right?
But it's there now, so.
But it's there now, but, so my concern is because it's there now, it's our responsibility to make it conforming, when, in my mind, it wasn't, shouldn't have been there to start with. You know, so anyways, I can go and build my house because I want to, and then come in for a rezone, so I'm conforming.
If I can add, purpose, the motivation for being here tonight is to make it conforming. I've lived there, been there for 52 years. I'm at a point in my life when we need to start thinking about who's going to be there next. The way that it's sets now, there's 2 parcels, and I'm concerned with one of those maps for my family. So I'm trying to get the groundwork done for the future. That's the motivation. There's a lot of places around us, as was mentioned, that are less than an acre, that are non-conforming with the county and probably can't ever be conforming, but I felt like by subdividing 2 parcels, 2 5-acre things from the 10, that it would be a step in the right direction for my children.
In applying the same logic, wouldn't we need to rezone 4830 to an RR1? So, I mean, basically, if we were to do it in this one, we'd have to go through and make most of it RR1. Because 4830, I think, was only, what, an acre or right around there? You click on that one.
My understanding is that's an option. We could be here to extend the tunnel zoning of RR1 to go up the highway past our place, and we could leave the A20 in place, but the RR1 along the road, and still have the one residence on that particular zone. We elected to do it this way. We thought it was cleaner. So.
Mr. Duffy, can I ask you a quick question on the one resident talked about how that was a problem with the bed and breakfast? Is that part of what you're talking about there? You understand what I'm saying?
No.
He,
It was just like a short-term rental.
yeah, Ricky Halverson brought that up, said there were some problems with,
The
Do you
10
know anything
acres
about
is currently owned by an LLC. There are 4 owners with 1 share each on the 1 5-acre parcel. And then I own the other 4 shares on the other 5-acre parcel. So if this rezone was approved, I would change, let them continue with the LLC on their 4. They are 4 owners, they share ownership in that cabin that we built originally. They use it for second recreation, they come up occasionally. That I will assume will continue, regardless of whether this is approved tonight or not. They own the property. I have my 4 shares on my 5 acres. We do not, we just live there. But when it comes time to, because it is 1 parcel, when it comes time to transfer that, half of that parcel to my children, it's difficult. That's why I'm here tonight.
I could go either way.
We
On
have,
one side, it's okay, it's not gonna increase density. On the other side, then that's gonna start opening up for tunnel zoning moving all the way up the hill.
Yeah, I think that's probably my bigger issue is you go to the smaller lots and they would come in and apply the exact same logic of, hey, we're non-conforming, we wanted this to rezone to be conforming, and so if the real question is if we just want to extend it all, or extend tunnel zoning all the way up and just make that all RR1 basically, because otherwise if I was 4820 or 4830, I'd come in and present the exact same question of rezoning.
But what benefit would that be to you, to rezone to one? Like, the benefit for him is to get 2 parcels out of that one piece.
Right, but then if,
Really a benefit to doing 48.
no, 4830, let's say it goes to RR1, then they come, or any of the larger landowners right around there are then gonna
Right
come in and
behind.
say, right behind, okay, they're RR1, they're right next door to me, I should be RR1 too, now I can get increased density. So it's not for this issue, but it does open that same logic and that door down the road to simply say, all of these lots should be RR1.
So do you want input on this at all, or?
Well,
In my opinion, the 5 acre, to split it up, split the lot how they want to, would probably be the smart thing to do. I don't know that I want to extend tunnel zoning up that far. That's my opinion.
like Haley pointed out, it doesn't increase density. There's 2 residents now. After the rezone, there'll still be 2 residents. Just on the possibility it could be put on 2 separate parcels that conform.
Is there one shared septic, or both houses have a septic? A septic tank? Is there 2 or 1?
Both dwellings have their own
Their own.
septic system, have their own well, have their own address, have their own utilities.
I mean, technically, you said no more density. They could do a detached, their dwelling units, now they could have up to 4 houses, right?
So could everyone else.
No, I understand that, but if you were to split it to RR5, technically you could go from 2 houses to 4 houses.
Anyone ready to make a motion? And remember, it's the handout one is the correct motion.
I don't like it because you take, it almost feels like me, do what you want. So by building the second house, it was non-conforming to start with before they built the house.
Yeah, but at some point they did get it approved by somebody
In the
this
county.
building. All right, I move we forward a positive recommendation to the county commission for the Guffey rezone application number 23.089, changing 10 acres with an amendment to the future land use map from ag to ranch residential 5 and rezone changing from A20 to RR5 based on the findings listed in the staff report.
I have a motion by member Bass. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, I have a second by member Wilson. Any more discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All vote aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
So we have 3 aye, member Wilson, myself, and member Bass in favor, member Stevens, and member Miller against. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is discussion, public hearing decision, drinking water source protection code text amendment.
Good evening. The county commission requested staff bring the, this ordinance, the protection of public drinking water sources, to you for your review and a recommendation, positive or negative, to take to them for next Tuesday's meeting. So if you have comments, concerns, questions, the county attorney and I and member Sessions have gone through it. So maybe we start there instead of reading it all.
I do have a question, maybe before we get started. Like, there's been quite a few, like, I feel things that have popped up on our agendas that the commission wants us to look at. Is there anything specifically, like, driving these agenda items? Like, is there something wrong with them that needs to be fixed?
We currently do not have a water protection ordinance.
Okay.
Commissioner McConnell drafted this ordinance, presented it to the county commission, and they forwarded it to you for a recommendation.
Is that something that most counties have? Like, are we just behind, or?
That is a question I cannot answer. I don't know what counties have them. I know larger counties, it was mentioned in the county commission meeting that larger counties on the other side have them, but I can't tell you which ones.
Class 1 and Class 2 counties, the larger counties were required to have them by 2010. And then Class 3, 4, 5, and 6 counties, it says May. So I don't know how many of the smaller ones counties have them. We're Class 4.
So Josh, I should probably already know this, and I don't. What's the difference between this proposal and what we already have in terms of well protection? How many feet? Do you understand how many feet they're asking to change it to?
Yeah, currently when subdivision goes in, if there's gonna be wells, they're required a 100-foot well protection zone. This would affect the public source, my understanding of the ordinance would, and Garrett can correct me if I'm wrong, but that this ordinance would affect all of the water companies' wells as well, and that it adds additional provisions for the protection of that water, which could affect surrounding properties.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, you did. I'm just curious in terms of the amount of footage. What's the increase on footage in terms of that?
It's the same.
Yeah, it's still for tier 1 or whatever it's
Zone
called.
1.
Zone 1, it'd still be 100 feet. For zone 2, it no longer deals in feet. It deals in a 250-day time period for water to travel from one point to reach the well. And if contaminated water can reach from where the agriculture use or whatever use is on those properties, if that contaminated water can reach the source within 250 days, then there's an issue.
Right now, when a well goes in, like a public water system, they have to reach a land use agreement with adjoining landowners for the source protection. This ordinance will remove that requirement and just slaps the protection on top of neighboring properties.
Makes sense to me.
So this would end up just being like a checklist item.
It I believe would be more than just a checklist item. It would allow for the, and correct me if I'm wrong, Garrett, but it would allow for the entities that own the wells to bring hydrologic and geotechnical maps and data stating that there are issues which the county or the district court could enforce to stop a certain use on properties. Is that your reading?
Yeah, so they call it a hydrogeologist or hydrogeologic investigation to show basically how far would you have to protect that wellhead. Because if after 250 days, if you look on page 6 in the packet on this one, section 3, it says zone 2 is an area within a 250-day groundwater time of travel to the wellhead or spring. And so that would be dependent on elevations. And so that's why they have that hydrogeologic study that would have to be done. And so what this is doing is it would be the county establishing or creating an ordinance to establish these water source protection zones rather than, as Member Sessions said, getting that agreement in place between the affected landowners.
It would restrict uses on those properties.
So can I ask a couple questions then, Josh? It reminds me of the geotech ordinance where we passed an ordinance and it created, who's gonna pay for these tests? They sound expensive to check water that's gonna travel 250 feet in how many days, did you say?
250
How do you do
days.
that? Who pays for that? Who,
The original test that they would bring to the county showing that there's a violation would have to be paid for by the owners of the well or the source that's to be protected. But this also requires the property owner who has been issued a violation or whatever to pay for their own study to prove that it's not.
and like, how much are we talking? Do you know?
I have no idea. If it's like a geohazards, it could be thousands of dollars.
And this is for things like a water company.
I think that you would want to clarify that in the text, because the way it's written, although in the rest of the recitals at the beginning, where it's specifically mentioning public water systems, if you look at the second whereas, it says, whereas many residents of Morgan County receive drinking water from public water systems in the county. I think you'd want to just make a recommendation, and I'm happy to make those changes, that it's restricted to public water systems throughout, so that it wouldn't be expanded to apply to every single private well.
But if you're a property owner that's caught in this 250-day source protection, you can't have a septic tank, a drain field, or an animal feeding operation with more than 10 animal units. So you would be restricted on those uses you couldn't do on your own property.
So what happens if,
You build before 250 days and then you get restricted?
well, if we pass this and then all of a sudden somebody's well's not in compliance with it, then what?
For clarification, the 250 days is the measurement of time that the hydrologists determine that the water travels from certain points to the well source and creates a contamination of the well source. It's not a 250-day moratorium on when you can build and have the uses.
And it can run for a mile or more, that 250-day, depending on the soils and the geology,
Elevation.
elevation, yeah.
So, do we have a problem?
That's what I don't understand what we're trying to fix here.
Me too.
I don't have an answer for that.
What we can do is take public input. I think at this time, I think we have some public here. Maybe
That's
help
fine
with our
with me.
decision.
Cause, yeah, I'm curious.
Madam Chair, I move we go into public hearing for item number 8.
Okay, motion by Member Bass to move into public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Stevens. All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay, we're now in public hearing. If you would like to address this regarding drinking water source protection, please come forward and state your name for the record.
My name's Nathan Hadley. I am a Morgan County resident. I'm also the water operator for Highlands Water. I've worked for several different water systems in the state. And you'd think being a water operator before this, but I'm not for this. This already occurs and is controlled by the Division of Drinking Water. They already requires water systems to have this in place and to update it regularly. And they have an enforcement that if we don't do that, we get points on our system. And if you get so many points, you can incur other penalties from the Division of Drinking Water at the state level. And I think it's a good thing to have. I don't understand why, if it's happening at the state level, why do we need to have the county and put more work and items on the list of the county personnel to do and perform. And the other thing is, I think it takes away that, I have a problem with landowners not being able to, like, if we, as a water company, we approach the landowner and they agree to signing in a source protection zone, that's their right. If they want to doing this, it just takes their freedom away from agreeing to that. They just have to do it because it's an ordinance of the county. That's all I have to say.
And just for information, he did send us an email. I don't know if you saw that.
My name is Bart Smith, here on behalf of Highlands Water Company as well. Maybe can give just a little bit of background. About 4 or 5 years ago, we were trying to get our well source protection approved. Our well is surrounded by Dwayne Johnson's property, and he wouldn't sign it. And so we went to the state, and of course, they do want to see an ordinance in each county. As Chairperson Sessions said, at least in the big ones, and they'd like to see as many of the smaller ones get it as well. So there were meetings set up at that time with Lance Evans, planner at the time, and there were a few water companies all invited throughout the county to participate in that. Some of the things that come out of that discussions at that time was, is it a taking on property rights? You know, how much farmland? Are you trying to tell them what they can and can't do anymore with their ground? That was a concern on the county level. I remember Trevor Colby from the Peterson Pipeline was there, and he said, if the county's overseeing this, are they going to really do it right? And I'm trying to remember, and correct me if those of you from Peterson, they allowed, I think, the Whittier Estates, and I think that's where the well is, within that source protection zone. So the county was, instead of looking out for them, they were actually putting homes in with septic tanks in close proximity to the well. So the county would have to do a better job of paying attention, enforcing things, if they want to take this on. It basically was shot down. They didn't feel that it was justified to kind of put an ordinance in place at that time, which kind of set us back, but we finally got ours resolved. Someone asked the question, why is this coming up now? There's a new water company trying to be formed, and what we've been told from the state is that's the last hurdle. So you have a county commissioner that's trying to put this ordinance in place so that that water company, who he works for or represents legally, to be able to get that last hurdle taken care of. That's why this is coming before you right now.
My name's Jeff Jones. We have a cattle ranch just up the road. I'm not sure why we're talking about this, because time and time again, our president has assured us that our borders are secure. Anyway, I run cattle, and I don't want anything to inhibit what we do or how we do it. We got enough regulation, okay? And I know it's not common for people to understand, but a development can contribute just as much to polluting water as cattle or livestock farming. So I don't know that you're going down a good road in this county with this border protection.
I'm not going to be hard on Jeff, but it looks like he and I both found the cure for gray hair. I'm Randy Sessions. I hope you give no recommendation of any positivity to this ordinance tonight.
I've gone through the ordinance. There's two or three things. Very first of all, is if you read the zones that it addresses, 820 is not addressed there. If you go back and look R10, R5, R1, 820 is not addressed, and the excuse was, well, we're not going to affect agriculture. But as you go down through the program, or through the ordinance, suddenly we're talking about animal feeding operations, an animal unit, and possible contaminations. And the contaminations, there's a list of those. But it seems like the target of this are animal feeding operations, agriculture operations. And I'm a dumb old farmer, but I learned a long time ago, if you get E. coli in your water system, you treat it with chlorine. Just like that. If you go to a large city somewhere back east, that water tastes pukey because it's been treated with chlorine. It gets rid of the E. coli. My concern is that as you read this ordinance, the animal or the target, and E. coli is the target. To me, it's a lot different. There's the public water systems we're talking about, or the Mountain Green. There's 3 systems down there. The next system is Peterson. So if you move a 250-day water deal from Mountain Green up, it's probably going into Peterson. And then if Peterson has a 250-day thing, it probably goes past Enterprise. You have a public water system in Enterprise that goes up past Hidden Hollow that's there by Stoddard Lane. By now we're into Morgan City. And so what other contaminants might you find along the freeway or the railroad? I've seen the railroad drive along the railroad tracks with big old tanks squirting out sterilant on either side of the railroad to make sure that nothing grows so they don't catch their lines on fire. I appreciate that. But the thing is my experience with sterilants, they stay in the ground for a long time. If you're spraying with Roundup, you can have weeds in 2 weeks. But if it's a sterilant, it cleans it out. And if the water comes and pushes it down, how long does it take for that to get to the well? I've been to enough meetings, and agriculture's the whipping boy. We need to be more concerned about pharmaceuticals. I joked I couldn't get out of bed in the morning if it weren't for the pills I take that roll me out of bed. But my body doesn't use them all, so the next morning I discharge them into the sewer system, and they enter into the, and we don't know. I sat in a meeting once, and they talked about the fish that come, they have fish they trap up behind the sewer systems that come out of Park City. And those fish have, how should I put this, confused genitalia. How does that sound? They can't tell if they're boys or girls. I joked the other night that they swim to the right until after the Sundance Film Festival, and then they go to the left. But the biggest rip I have against this ordinance is enforcement. It allows a water company to put the county on notice that they have 10 days that this person upstream has done something. They don't know where the pollution came from. They don't know what it is. I suggest maybe sometimes the E. coli may come from a sloppy worker that works around the wellhead instead of the cow up the street. I can probably go in homes and do swabs of counter table or kitchen counters and find as much E. coli as you find in a water system. You know, E. coli is all around us. Our bodies get used to it. But in this ordinance, as you read it about the animal confinement operations and the scrutiny they'll put on that, that doesn't do it. But it says the county will be notified. The county has 10 days to do anything. So I don't like the fact that the county can turn around and sue me as a taxpayer because some other person complained to you. That would be the other thing. But if the county doesn't do anything, then they can sue me. It goes back to the question that Member Wilson asked. So whose engineer are we going to believe if we start deciding where 250 days take? So this is bad. The state has it. We don't need to worry about it. There's one other issue that, as I read this ordinance, came to my mind is in some areas there's private wells, currently the private wells. But it may be a really good well that a public system can say, we're not doing so well. We want that public well. Now, obviously, they would have to drill a new, deeper, bigger well. but it might be next to my fence. And it might not be does it have that 100-foot clearance, or is it gonna be taking my property? Now, if I want to sign on and sell them the property, fine, but if they can put an overlay on my property, in my view, that's a taking. We have enough guff going on. Please do not accept this ordinance, discharge it, and make the recommendation to the county commission they do not approve it. Thank you.
I'm Mike McMillan, and I'm really happy to not be here. This ordinance is very clear. We need to just be very upfront what's happened. My neighbors have drilled a well, and they have 100 feet. That's no problem. But they need 1.25 mile of zone 2. So the well is right by the rest area. So zone 2 is over 1,000 feet wide, and it's 1.25 miles long. So it reaches from the rest area down past my house. And this clearly is just the developer has a degree of influence in our county government. And so this is a proposal to have it so that if I turn my cows out, which I do, and they go out in the meadow and they pollute it, if you adopted this, then you'd come to me and force me to remove the cows. And it would be my expense. The developer doesn't have to, under this proposal, they don't have to pay anything. Because this obligates Bonnie Brown and myself to make sure that there are no cows there. And it's not about even the confined feeding, it's any cows. And it's clear what it is. It's just to get them to not have to pay to have it. Ordinarily, what they have to do is, like Bart was saying, they have to go and negotiate with a neighbor that's adjacent to the well to go ahead and keep that clean. In other words, you can't put cows there. You've got to have an easement that takes care of it. But I think it's a taking, okay, and it's clear. I sent a document over to the Planning Commission that showed their proposal a year ago. And it has a map there, and it has a scale. It verifies that it's that far. And we have actually all the proper programs that we have with the state of Utah. The state has to approve where the well goes. It has to approve. You have to get a permit from them. And this is just a duplication, and it's just a maneuver, in my opinion, to pass costs on. I had my attorney send a copy. Debbie, do you have a copy of that
He sent an email.
in an email?
Yeah.
Could I ask somebody to read that? I can't read it tonight, okay, because I left my glasses home, and they didn't do it in Braille. Could I ask one of you to go ahead and read that for me?
I represent, this is from Benson Hathaway Jr. Honorable Commissioners, I represent Mike and Ann McMillan, who are the owners of the ranch on the south side of the old highway, about 3990 west near Mountain Green. The ranch is active and where the McMillans raise in excess of 120 head of cattle. Just recently, 3 new culinary wells were drilled on property adjacent to the McMillans Ranch to the west. The McMillans recently learned that the county is proposing an ordinance providing for the protection of public drinking water sources, which was enclosed. On its face, the ordinance would not only overlay the McMillans Ranch, but most of Morgan County's remaining pastoral land. Given the McMillan Ranch's historical and intended future use, the overlay ordinance creates a substantial issue, specifically as limits the animal feeding operation on any affected land to 10 animal units for any 45-day period within a year. Imposition of the overlay ordinance and enforcement of its restrictions effectively puts the McMillans cattle operation at the whim of Morgan County, if not out of business. Section 4A would grandfather any establishment used and incidental and accessory uses from the harm caused by the proposed ordinance. However, the caveat that such use is substantially determined by a court to be a nuisance is ambiguous, places the grandfathered use at the mercy of Morgan County, and renders in limbo the McMillans' reliance on the county for future cattle operations. The proposed ordinance makes it clear that Morgan County is targeting livestock operations. It may be worth your commission noting and considering that Morgan County has existed for over 160 years and is predominantly pastoral and agricultural community. This proposal rests from all ranchers and landowners using their property for ranching and that historical and future use. It ends that use for essentially all inhabited family ranch operations in the county, with the only remedy being a challenge to the boundary designation imposed by the county. Morgan County's proposed ordinance is overreaching, overly broad, and forever changes the essential and fundamental nature of Morgan County, the very land uses that render Morgan County as desirable as it's been for the last 160-plus years. For these and other provisional reasons, the McMillans urge the Planning Commission reject and not recommend adoption of the proposed Morgan County ordinance providing for the protection of public drinking water sources. In addition, the McMillans and entities owned and controlled them are presently represented by the law firm in which Commissioner Robert McConnell is a shareholder. In light of that ongoing relationship, the McMillans view his role in drafting the proposed ordinance and in advocating for his adoption to be a conflict of interest and a conflict in his firm's representation for the McMillans. They therefore request that he abstain from any further participation in the process. And then he signed it.
Thank you. Now you can see why I asked her to read it. The item 4 on what they provided to you talks about the accessory uses and what we're presently using with the grandfather. Then as soon as you move to portion 5, then you see that it's not grandfathered. It can be challenged just in the district court. So what it's doing is it's making so that I'm sure with Nancy's horses there, we probably can't be considered clean. I'm sure it's not. And so then the county would come to me and they would issue a citation, and I would have to do whatever it is to clean it up, and the person with the well wouldn't have to do anything until it's clearly just a move for them to avoid the extreme costs and inconvenience. I think, Barbara, when you go to put a new well, that's the worst part of it. And somehow they feel like, my wife and I moved back here 48 years ago. We built one house because we wanted one of the kids to be nearby to look after her. I have never built another house. I've kept it open, and it's really offensive to me. I have other properties, but for here, I think when you drive up the canyon, it's beautiful. You know, I've not had an inclination to develop it, and this ordinance they're providing to you for consideration now forces me, the only use that I have is to go ahead and develop it. I can't have livestock on it because the ordinance will start to penalize me right away. I don't need to develop it. I don't want to develop it. I think it looks good like it is. And you know, when I croak off, why the next generation might want to do something different. But for now, I'm good. But this forces me. It's no good for livestock anymore if you adopt that. All I can do is just go ahead and get rid of it and do something different. It's really a negative thing that it puts on us as landowners. It's absolutely uncalled for, it's unnecessary, and so I would request that you really think about it and don't do it. You got any questions, or I probably can't answer them, so don't think very hard. Anything else? It just, you don't realize until you get into it. When I didn't think it was that bad, and then I took it to the attorney, and he says, well, this is just a setup. You know, you're going to be grandfathered, and the next year, if you have a problem with it, they just go to district court and change under section 5, and then it will be your responsibility. Until, and you know, I've had very good neighbors. I'm not opposed to when they did Wilkinson's, they asked me if I had a problem. I says, you know, you don't bother me and I won't bother you. I never had any, I'm a private property rights person. But this is different. This is going in and making a situation where nobody has a financial incentive to keep any open ground. I mean, why would you? Don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ray Nettleton. I also think this is a overreaching ordinance. It's kind of like a rhetorical question, but this is with respect to sewer or septic tanks. It appears to me that zones 2 through 4 could basically eliminate all septic tanks from the county. Doesn't the Morgan Weaver Health Department issue and regulate those, and if there's a sewer available, they have you hook up, but if there's a piece of property that doesn't require that this can't get hooked up, but is perfectly safe for a septic tank, it seems like this is would prohibit that. And I got some questions, without the public being able to see a bunch of maps, but are there how many different aquifers are there in Morgan County? Are they labeled as protected? It'd be nice that if someone could present all that hydrological data that backs up the 1.5 mile and kind of shows how those areas would spread potentially to the whole valley. Again, I just think it's a little overreaching and ill-considered.
Thank you. Any more comments?
I move we go out of public hearing.
Motion by Member Bass,
Second.
second by Member Stevens. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're out of public hearing. Okay, discussion.
I had a question for Garrett. How is it not a conflict of interest?
So from my understanding, the county used to have a different conflict of interest ordinance, but under state code, as long as you declare the conflict, then you can still participate and vote.
So I could, because I mean, I do get it. It almost feels like self-dealing, right? In other words, I draft something that then I vote on that directly benefits me. It seems like that's by far the definition of a conflict of interest, right? And you should abstain because you can't vote on something that directly benefits you that you also drafted. So it just seems like I'm not comfortable with voting on something that was drafted by the person that's going to be voting on it.
In favor.
In favor.
For sure.
For sure. And so, if I were to say to the council is, I would say we have someone independent if we're going to do, I don't want to even put up a negative recommendation because then they will simply vote to overrule us, but we can draft a new ordinance that changes and fixes a lot of the issues or drafted by an independent party, and then they have to either show why they don't like that ordinance or why they would rather go with the one that they drafted themselves.
See, and my thing is, we don't even need an ordinance because the state of Utah does all of the water stuff.
And drinking water.
Right.
But my issue is if we put a
Right.
negative recommendation, they still vote on it. If we put something else up there, they have to vote on that as well.
Is there a possibility of postponing it indefinitely, or do we have to forward?
We have to forward.
Yeah, you can't
Eventually.
postpone indefinitely. I think we've talked about that at prior meeting where our code indicates that you look at it for a meeting, but I know with some there's been more discussion that's been had, but our code implies that you hear it once, you forward a recommendation, but if you're working on things, I know that that's been different in the past as well. But I hope I answered your question. At least the state code requirements is what the county defers to for conflicts of interest at this
Now,
point.
let me ask one follow-up question. If I wanted to be on the other side, wouldn't it open the county up for suing? Because I would certainly be going, if I was negatively impacted, the first thing I would do is say it should have never been put up for a vote. So does the county have any liability with, even though that's the state, or how the state interprets it, would there still be liability to the county for conflicts of interest suit?
I don't see that because we haven't violated any, like, they would have to bring some statute that was violated, and if we're not violating the statute, I don't think it opens us up for liability. But I think, you know, the discussion of helping narrow the ordinance to avoid the potential liabilities that were brought up today, as far as, you know, prohibiting uses or taking certain uses, we would want to see how that would be handled, who would pay for that, you know, if there was some taking of a use.
Let me ask one other. So let's say I was on the county commission. I'm not on the county commission, and I said I want to give myself a $100,000 raise. Everybody on the county commission, or however they do it, they would go through the planning commission. So something that directly benefits me. So you're saying I could propose it, and then I can vote on it, and I directly benefit, and there's no conflict. I mean, then it seems like that as long as I disclose my conflict, there is no conflicts of interest check whatsoever.
That's correct. So the county commission establishes their budget. It doesn't come to the planning commission because it's irrelevant to land use. I'm sure if they did that, they'd all be voted out, but it's definitely possible. That's not a conflict in and of itself because they're statutorily charged with the budget for the county.
Okay. All right. That does answer my question.
Yeah.
The thing is if we review this and have somebody make another draft, if at any point the landowners don't have to make an agreement, it's still doing the same thing.
Right.
So I guess I don't understand the purpose. I don't understand the purpose of like why we would rework it or send it to somebody else when the basics of it are that they don't want to have to get permission from their neighbors.
Why can't we put up a draft to them where they do have to get a permission?
Well, that's
and
the
then put it up?
current.
Because that's what we do right
That's
now.
what we do now.
So it has to do with the state.
But I'm saying if they want to overrule it, then make them vote on which one they want. In other words, they have to go on record and say, we don't want this in here, we want it removed, and this is why. If we put that up in a draft, even if it's redundant with the state, they still have to vote, we don't want the one draft with it in there, we want it without.
Right.
How quick can you do that, Adam?
A lot.
I would like to, I don't know that I want to be as I just defined that I think whether or not the state statute requires it, there's an inherent conflict of interest for someone drafting something that they are then voting on. So I would want to be the one to draft it if I'm going to be the one voting on it. So I'd have the county attorney or Josh or someone draft it. Someone other than me draft it. If it's a independent third party, then I would be more comfortable voting on it. So I don't know
I
that I
have
want to draft it
a
because of
question
conflicts of
also
interest.
for.
If I can address that really quick.
Yeah.
I'm not a hydrogeologist. I don't understand a lot of the specifics that I would have to understand in order to draft an ordinance to address the concerns and comments. So in order to draft an additional ordinance, we would have to hire a hydrogeologist along with.
Did we have an original hydrogeologist draft the ordinance?
No.
My understanding is
If we have to
that-
hire one to fix it, why didn't we hire one to draft it in the first place?
I can't answer that. What I know is the county commission reviewed the ordinance at the December 19th meeting. They voted to forward it to the planning commission for you to review and then to forward to them a recommendation, positive or negative, with your findings of fact, and then that they would hear it and review your comments.
What was their general consensus when they had their meeting?
The vote to send it back to you to review was unanimous, if I remember correctly.
Well, what was the comments about the draft?
I don't remember specifics.
I don't think it was, I don't think they spent much time on it. I think it was more under, I know the old code, but basically where it says there's 3 ways to do a land use ordinance. You have to get, staff is directed by the commission, the planning commission, or someone can come in and pay a fee and present their ordinance. He basically presented it and said, I would like for the commission to direct staff to move this to the planning commission and bring it back to us. And that was the unanimous decision. But as far as substantive discussion, I don't recall that there was much discussion
Okay.
at that meeting.
In this ordinance, the state Division of Drinking Water has sample ordinances, and the original one that was worked on came from their website, and it was tweaked a little bit.
You know, it was tweaked.
What?
You know what aspects were tweaked?
Yeah, there was a red line copy I think we got in our packet. There was a red line
Yeah.
copy where you can see the red
It's the one
lines
in
were
the packet.
changed.
So.
The original one was
Oh,
pretty
okay,
standard.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
So that's good to know. I didn't realize that it came
They
from the
have,
website, so.
yeah,
So I think the red lines are the only changes that Commissioner McConnell put in. Is that right, Member Sessions?
I'm thinking,
Okay. Doesn't sound like he drafted it. He took it from the website.
the website has, yeah,
Made some changes,
you can find draft ordinances on their website.
and he removed zone 3 and 4, which is the most, what would the word be?
Overreaching.
Overreaching, because it's a 3-year and 15-year groundwater time of travel.
I have a question, more of a frustration. So, in the last few months, we've been getting things that they are directing us to look at. They send us a draft that they've already looked at, and then they want us to recommend a positive or a negative. The problem is if we do a negative, they have full power to say, we're not listening to you, we're passing this anyway. I feel like we're getting pinned against a wall by all the stuff that they're sending us, because we essentially have no option. Like, we went through the flag lot, we went through the accessory dwelling unit, and basically we got told, like, you have to give them something, and so our opinion is, well, let's give them the best thing that we can get, even though we don't agree with these things. Like, it's frustrating.
But that's the nature of our code, and they're elected officials, and you're not. And so I'm sorry, that's just the way our code is set up. And if you want to direct staff to make a code amendment, you could. But once again, you're a recommending body. You're an advisory body. You're not.
But if they're not
the
going to
land use
listen to our
authority.
recommendations, why even send it to us in the first place? Why don't they just make the decision?
Because it's required by our code for any land use decision to
Well, it
go.
puts us in a really crappy spot.
It allows you to voice your concerns and articulate those and give them recommendations to make a better ordinance than otherwise would exist.
But like this, for example, Steve.
Can I ask you a question real quick? How are we supposed to make a better recommendation when this is the ordinance that they presented to us? Are you saying we can add to it?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say do your red lines. Put in, I mean, even the one I suggested at the beginning, wherein, or where in the recitals it has the whereas and it talks about public water systems. But then in section 1, it just says surrounding wellheads and springs, but doesn't say of public water systems. You could put that in to restrict it, to say this isn't going to apply to every well in the county. It's only to public water systems.
That's what I'm saying, Garrett. We can recommend that, and they're gonna look at it, and they're gonna do what they want anyway. That's what I'm saying back to you.
Yeah, they can. That's exactly right. But if you're putting it in and explaining why, say, well, this would be far overreaching because then, if you live on your own property and you have well and your septic is there, I mean, maybe you're in violation just yourself from your own well, right? Or you run cattle, you live in an A20 and you've got 20 acres and you have cattle that are affecting your wellhead. It's overreaching that way, and so, and I'll be at the meeting too, so I came here, I was invited so that I could answer questions, but I can also be more aware of your comments and communicate those to the commission. You can reach out to them as well. But, as far as liability-wise and enforcement and what the county wants to take on, I think everything you say I can, communicate to them and then add my legal recommendation for what they should or shouldn't do. So if you make a recommendation that this should only apply to public water systems, and then I say I agree with that and my legal recommendation is to do that because it's so overreaching, or the potential takings or these other claims, then I think that that could be more persuasive because there's more voices behind it. Now, if you make a recommendation that I disagree with, I mean, I'm going to say what I think. So,
I got one more question. If we were to end the findings, so let's say we redrafted it and we said, we don't think this language should be in here because we think it's illegal and we'll get the county sued. We put that on record and the county's aware of that and acknowledges it and then overrides it. How does that play out in court? In other words, it's on record that part of the, at least the planning commission, which is the advisory body, says this is illegal and illegal overreaching. It should not be put in here. If they were to take it out and say, we disagree, if you were to go to court, obviously the one side is going to say, they knew that this was wrong and they did it anyway. It seems like it still opens the county up to liability.
I would say I understand what you're saying, but it would be more on the merits of whether the county is liable. It may be a bad look, but the judge would decide whether there's liability or not, regardless of what the planning commission or commission thought. Does that make sense? It's more of an optics thing.
But
than,
you could, if if they knew that it was illegal and did it anyway, then you could have additional damages.
well, I don't know that they'd know it was illegal because we don't know it's illegal till the court, makes a decision. You can say, we think that it opens us up to great liability because of these reasons. And they say, well, we don't think it does. A judge will make that determination.
They would have to substantiate what, the next question I would ask is, why don't you think it does? In other words, you have to explain your side, whereas if it was never raised, they would never have to explain why they don't think it violates it.
Right, but I think regardless of whether you put that into your minutes, the attorney that sues the county, if there's something there that may open the county for liability, is going to articulate those same things. So,
So, just for me, with all this, I mean, the legal stuff, that just goes over my head. But
All right, don't need to go
you,
here.
you're fine. But in my mind, what's the best interest for Morgan County? And that, we're drafting a thing, here we are, I want to say the majority of people want it to be rural, and we're being forced to move urban. And you've listened to some farmers around here, I'd hate to have my name signed on something, I just put them out of business that they've been here for years. All to promote, in my opinion, growth. And all that. And so I don't know, you can talk about personal wells, whatever. That's not what this is dealing with, even though it ought to be in here. This is dealing with public well systems or whatever, with these protection zones that's going to change the lifestyle of Morgan County. So, in my opinion, is what is Morgan County gaining from this?
And my personal opinion, I don't think this ordinance can be fixed.
Well, that's.
I don't either, so that's,
I think you go back to where we're at, and that's the hard thing. Those you want to put findings in it, which we need, but the findings are that we already have one in place, and we don't need to make a change. We don't need to jeopardize the lifestyle that we choose to have.
we don't have an ordinance in place, but we have a process in place.
But it's the same, right?
Land use agreements, yes.
But through the state, it's taken care of.
They monitor the source protection, yes.
Yeah, can I ask one other question? Is there a way that you can put this up for public vote?
It's a legislative action, yes, there is.
yeah,
It'd be,
I'm very well versed in it, in that process.
it is referable.
Can you walk me through the process of putting it up for public vote?
So I can. So within 7 days of a final decision by the land use authority on a land use decision, then there can be an application for referendum filed, and as long as that's filed under the terms of the state code, then it would go through a signature gathering process. If they gather enough signatures and it's certified by the election code official in the clerk's office, then at that point it would go on depending on when it happens, think April 15th is kind of the day sticking out in my head, but if it happens before then or after then, it determines whether it can go on that year on a ballot or the following year, you know, a subsequent election. So that's kind of the basic process for that.
Sorry, and you said the triggering, or for when that 7-day period is, what was the triggering again?
It would be a final determination by the Land Use Authority, which would be the county commission.
So 7 days after the county commission were to vote on it, people would have the opportunity to put it as a referendum. If they were successful, then the public would vote on it as opposed to the county or commission be able to decide.
Right. So under the Utah Constitution, Article 6, it says that a local, like a county's decision can be referred to the voters. And so, you know, federally, the people don't have any legislative authority at all, but under the Utah Constitution, you can initiate legislation. If you've heard of initiatives, that's what it's talking about. So you can initiate legislation or you can refer legislation, which is the referendum.
All right. Sorry, got one more question. Maybe one more. I shouldn't say one more. Another question. So can the county commission or decide to put it up for vote? In other words, put it up for public vote if they wanted to?
No, they're under our code or under CLUDMA, you know, County Land Use. Is it CLUD Development Act? So they have to make a final determination before a referendum application could even be filed.
I was asking, is there any other way besides doing a referendum that it can go for public vote? Yes.
I don't think so, because to go to public vote, unless it was an initiative, so I guess if someone was initiating legislation, it could be done that way. But
Aren't they?
what was that?
Aren't they initiating it?
No, the public
No,
wanted
the
to
public,
initiate.
because they're an elected body. So the
Right.
public in a republic, right? You elect your representatives, and then the representatives make those determinations.
How do you do an initiative?
An initiative, it's outlined in the Constitution and in the statutes, but I'm less familiar with that process.
Because my question is, if we wanted to, could you take this exact thing, do it as an initiative, and then allow the public to vote on it before it got to county commission?
Oh, no, that's good.
You could, but I think it would be much more difficult to do it that way.
I just was
And-
curious on the option.
If we think about, like, we have
And
a lot of.
I don't know that you do an initiative, because from what I gather from what you're saying is you don't want it.
You don't want
An
an
initiative is to pass an ordinance. And if you want to keep it the way it is, you don't want an ordinance to be
I'm
passed.
saying anybody here can do an initiative. I'm just saying if a public or someone within the county wanted to do an initiative to say, we want this to be voted on rather than going the referendum. I'm not saying they couldn't do the referendum as well, but if they wanted an alternative route, they could also do it as an initiative, say, I want this voted on. They would go through that process and also be able to get it prior to it going in.
But are you talking about this specifically or just in general on the initiative?
Either way.
Because I think what you're saying is you don't want the ordinance.
But if
And so
somebody
you
else
wouldn't
put it up-
want an initiative to begin with.
But if somebody that wanted it put it up, then they could do it.
Yes. Or
Or if they just simply didn't say
it
what
would
they
be,
wanted.
it would probably be a lot easier to, oh, I see what you're saying, because they'd want to take it to the people for the vote. Yeah, okay.
Okay, no, I just was curious on those possibilities.
You had a comment, or?
Well, yeah, my comment is, even though we have a lot of agricultural land, the problem with putting it to a vote, if that, and I'm not saying that's where we're going, or whatever, I'm just saying that the public would have to be very educated about what is in here. And there's only this many people that showed up because they actually read it and paid attention to it. So, you get what I'm saying? Like,
Could
people
agree,
are
but
voting
usually if they're-
on.
I guess it depends on if you think people inherently vote for something yes that they don't understand, or inherently vote for no for something they don't understand. I would
think
argue
I
that
think it'd be
if
a
I don't
yes.
understand something, I'm usually not going to vote yes. I want it.
From my
So-
experience, I don't think that that's the norm.
Right.
I think most people vote yes. I vote no if I don't understand, but
I guess I'm
I think
outside
most
the
people
norm. If
vote
I don't
yes.
understand something, I'm not going to agree to it.
We have
Okay, as far
two
as,
pathways. We can either vote for approve or deny, recommend, or we can postpone and try to write an ordinance.
it's gotta be postponed. I don't, because we all know what's gonna happen if we recommend a denial of
Okay,
this.
and so then we write an ordinance and give it to them. They can,
I want to have
They
the,
can
hy-
switch
the
it back.
hydrogeologist or whoever writes the ordinance.
This is the problem we have, is we can't write it.
no, it's,
I
We
wouldn't
have
have
the
I wouldn't have a
hydrogeologist
clue
to
what
approve.
even to put down or what to say.
I think
And so that's why I think
denial.
if you do forward a recommendation for denial, you need to articulate why you're denying it.
And I have some findings, and I think we can all come up, we can have Jeremy do his typing, and we can get our findings set.
I'm moving more for the latter, which is, before I vote on yes or no, I want to at least understand what it is, and if nobody can explain it to me, then we should have someone that can explain it to us on what we're voting before we actually vote. So if it's the hydrogeologist or whoever it is, I think that our obligation would be is, we shouldn't vote on something yes or no that we don't understand.
Or should we have Robert McConnell come to our next meeting to talk about it?
I was told he's not a hydrogeologist.
Well, but he's the one who wrote it, or put it together.
Well, he's gonna say, I didn't write it, it was the state's, their template, I just made a few amendments, whereas if you had someone that actually understood it, they can explain.
What don't you understand?
There's a lot of people that have raised how it's going to impact the farmers, the agriculture, the land,
And it
whether it
does.
seeps, or whether something seeps into the land, whether it doesn't, whether it comes from the railroad, whether it doesn't, all of those. I don't know if it's right or not, and before I vote yes or no, I'd like to know what we're voting on.
We owe this the same courtesy as flag lots and accessory dwelling units. So if they want a recommendation, we should sit down and go line by line.
So you want to postpone?
Yes. I want to get rid of it, but that's not an option, so. This is way bigger than flag lots or accessory dwelling units.
Okay, if
So how do I
Madam
make a
Chair, I
motion
move to
po-
postpone this item number 8, to our next regularly scheduled meeting.
we need to know an agenda. How are we on the agenda for our next meeting?
January 25th has a couple items.
No, not the 6th, that,
If you wanted to do a work session before, I'm happy to come to and do more research, or if you send me information, I can, or concerns, I can try to have a draft going as well.
Is there any, or is there ability to have someone that can explain it to us, though? I'm not saying you don't,
Well-
not putting you down, I'm saying somebody that has or actual background that can explain all of the concerns that
But-
people raise.
those were other concerns. We just have to deal with what's in the ordinances and the pollution sources identified in the ordinance. They're just bringing other possible pollution sources that weren't identified in this ordinance that could also contaminate the aquifer. And there doesn't seem to be concern with those.
I don't think you need a hydrogeologist to come explain to explain the ordinance. That would come more on the enforcement side. And so, for example, before the meeting, one of the, let's see,
But we write the code as to what he enforces, right? Or they would vote on the code as to what he enforces, so if we don't understand what he's able to enforce, then how can he enforce?
And who's he?
well,
I don't know.
or she, I mean,
The
I'm sure there's,
individual.
but, so Mr. McMillan, he talked about, a potential source protection with the 250 days, was 1.25 miles, and over 1,000 feet wide. And I, did meet with Josh in member sessions before the meeting, and I saw, the map. And I believe that map was created by a hydrogeologist to show the affected area. And so that gives us at least an idea of the scope, right? This extends further than I thought when I first read through it. I'm like, oh, 250 day, you know, I didn't understand that, but seeing the visual that it extends for 1.25 miles, okay, that's more it's bad.
That's my question.
It's
I
more
don't-
it's more significant. It's bad because at least from the perspective of the one running cattle, that they're restricted from using their land. So those types of things, I don't know that we need a hydrogeologist here to help us draft the code,
Well, if I
the
don't know
ordinance.
if 250 is good or bad, who do I ask?
Well, we have an example, and
But that example doesn't answer my question. It just means that it was pulled from somewhere. I have an example. It just means somebody put it in at some point. They may not have known any better than I did.
No, this was done by a
Yeah.
hydrologist. This is
that
official.
one
This
was
is-
done, so that's an official thing that we could show, okay, this is what it could be based on the elevation, water travel and so forth.
So we still want to postpone to the 25th is our agenda.
The 25th is light.
Okay,
So if we're postponing it till the 25th, what's going to happen in the meantime? What are you thinking? You want to meet?
Either more time to go line by line in our meeting,
to go
Which if
over
it's
it.
a
and to
lighter
make sure
w-
everyone understands what it actually says in here and what is it requiring.
Or do we have an extra meetings, I guess is what I'm asking.
or a work session.
Staff's preference is you lay out all the findings for your negative, because regardless of us going line by line, you're gonna recommend denial.
But we can recommend what we would put up, or the amendments we would make if we had additional time. So in other words, if I have to do a denial, but I can say, here's what I think it should be, I want that additional time to say, here's what I think it should be, and I can't do that if I do it tonight.
I do think, though, Chair Sessions said that she doesn't think it could be fixed, and so,
Right, I can leave the
So-
word "the" in there and write everything else, and that's fixing it. I mean, in other words, you can amend it heavily, and if it's 95% amended, it's still fixed.
Up to the commission what you'd prefer.
I second the motion to
Postpone
Postpone.
to the 25th, just at a regular meeting.
Yeah.
Are you gonna do like a work session
Well, that's what
with
we're
this
discussing.
then?
Yeah, if you're going line by line, it needs to start earlier. than
Okay, so
6:30.
we'll have a work session. So the motion will be to postpone to
Yeah.
the 25th. Do we want it on the agenda that same night? After the work meeting?
Yeah, because then if it's
We could
done,
put a
then-
decision on it too, possible. Okay. So we understand, we have a motion by Member Bass, a second by Member Miller. Everyone understanding, work meeting at our next meeting,
What time?
5 o'clock.
An hour and a half?
If we're going to try to rewrite an ordinance, yes.
the ability to meet with the county commission before, so I can understand where they're at on it.
You can,
there's no, I mean, their contact information's on the website. You can reach out to them anytime. I don't think that you need to, if you're asking, can you meet with them? I don't think they have a work session or anything
Okay.
scheduled. But you can email them, call them anytime.
okay,
Can you be here by 5?
I'll probably be here about 5:30. 5 is pretty tough on my schedule most of the time.
okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item, Planning Commission text amendment.
The county commission directed staff to bring a text amendment to section 155.028, planning commission reorganization. The change to the planning commission formation would reduce it to a 5-member commission based on the voting areas of the county, and would allow for one at-large member. So the planning commission would go from a 7-member commission to a 5-member commission, and the commission seats would be based on population.
And I have a concern, the districts, are they set up now includes the city's population, so as far as county residents, it wouldn't be equally distributed.
Sorry, say that again. I was trying to find it.
Okay, how it's set up, the new ordinance, they wanted to divide up according to voting districts, but the voting districts now include city population. So if we're just thinking county, it wouldn't equally distribute the representation, because you'd have the one that has the city would only have a little bit of the county because of the population of the city. So if we're talking about equal, I don't think this does it. I prefer an at-large. We used to do it at-large, where the county commission would just pick 7 people from somewhere in the county, and they would distribute it they always distributed it. They had kind of a gentleman's agreement for all walks of life, different areas, good mix of people.
So, I guess I go back to my same thing. What's wrong with it? And then we spend all the time collecting the area plans, so you have people that works, and I know some don't agree with area plans, but I think the area plans is good because that's the voice of the people we represent. Whether we're a planning commission or the county commission, we represent the people of Morgan County. So the area plans gives them something to say what they'd like to see their area grow as. And then you have a representative in the area. I think it's fine the way it is.
I think it's equal representation. Stoddard has 1 representative, Mountain Green has 1 representative. You have thousands of people in Mountain Green, you have a couple hundred in Stoddard. So if they're talking about equal representation on this board,
How hard is it to get somebody from Mountain Green to apply to be on this commission?
So can I just potentially raise a conflict of abide, which is I will be moving in about 6 to 7 months to Mountain Green. And so theoretically, I would be, if I were to be representing or doing different precincts, it could be impactful. So just in the light of, I was told that as long as I disclose my conflict, it doesn't matter.
so, I mean, they wanted more
They wanted more representation for where?
more equally distributed.
How is it not equally
I guess I
distributed
don't
now?
see that.
Because Mountain Green only has 1 representative, well, none right now, but only has 1. And that represents all those people of Mountain Green. the
Which is
thousands.
just because that's where more of your growth is at the moment.
Exactly.
But all those people still have an opportunity to talk to their representative.
Right.
Just like the people in Stoddard have an opportunity to talk to me, for me to bring their concerns to here. Like, it's still the same process.
It kind of think of like beginning, remember you had the large states and the small states, and Virginia is saying, well, we have way more people than Delaware. Is it fair that we have the same representatives, or should it be done by population? So that's kind of the concept behind, I don't know how many are in Mountain Green, but,
On the
say.
House or the Senate?
But
Exactly.
I guess I could go with that if the people from Mountain Green voted for who they want to put in there. But that's not the way this is set up.
That's right, because
So,
this is
so that
not
does,
an
that
elected
doesn't
body.
work. Because in that regard, you're saying that Mountain Green should have 2 or 3 people on the planning commission, but you could have one who thinks 180 of the other one, and they just apply for it, and then the county commission puts them on. So the only way you could fix that is if you had an election in Mountain Green, and they received 2 people to be on the planning commission that would represent them. That's the only way that works.
And is it about population or is it about land? Just because they have more people shouldn't discount how, because with two or three people from one area, that could swing this whole commission. So they're pro-growth or whatever the item is, they're for it. The other people in more rural areas with more land, essentially, don't have a chance.
Do we know the genesis for why they asked us to review this?
Nope. Staff was directed to bring this forward and get your recommendation and then to take it back to them.
Well, they didn't give any comment as to why they directed you.
They're not required to.
Is there a way to,
That's what I was asking. Whether or not they're required, they didn't.
and they're not required to because of the way that's written in our ordinance?
They are the legislative body. They are elected, and they can direct staff to change the text of the code. And that's what they've directed staff to do.
You can too as an unelected body, so both are allowed.
Yeah. If you... Steve's being quiet.
Well, to me, I listened to Garrett talk about the representation of the states. I mean, to me, this is the same. We got seven representatives in this county, which to me, if I was a county commissioner, I'd say, yeah, that's better. Gives me more information to come from. Having said that, they're the commissioner. They appointed me.
So
I would recommend what I'm going to recommend or vote. I'm going to vote and do what they want, as always.
I think I'm recommending denial, and I think that we should stick with the areas.
We ought to go into public hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Are you ready? I have a
Madam Chair, I
motion.
move we go into public hearing.
Motion by Member Bass to go into public hearing, and a second by Member Stevens. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now's the time for public comment regarding the makeup of the Planning Commission. Please come forward and state your name.
Thought you'd do it for me, Debbie. Vaughn Nickerson. After hearing about this, this has been a great meeting, by the way. I love this one established that our county commission can pretty much just do whatever they want, which is kind of the feeling of a lot of the county. As a contractor and working for a lot of different people around the county, they get really frustrated because you guys put out a recommendation and then our commission just does whatever they want. Also, having sat on an area planning committee, as a county, if you were a commissioner, you'd think you'd want a lot of information, a lot of input from all over the county, lots of people, very rural area. And this is taking that representation away from those rural areas and setting it into, say, Mountain Green, or what about Croydon? You know, if you're a commissioner, how do you make a decision if you don't live in Croydon, if you don't know those people or you don't have that input? That's where you people come in. That's where the area plan comes in, is the people in that area kind of give out what it is that they'd like. They put that plan together and then they ask their representative that's from their area to take that, discuss it with you people, and then take that recommendation to the commission and just pray to all that's holy that they'll even listen to you. And to me, that's frustrating as a resident when we have this commission and now they want less representation around the counties, go from 7 to 5, you know. And as I've talked to, Shane is my representative here on the board, and discussed with him, I'm like, why is it that, and nobody can give us a real reason of why more representation is bad. If we look at how our government is set up, we have people, we have the House, we have the Senate. They make recommendations, but they're there to represent the people, regardless of where they live or how much money they have, how much property they have, but to give them a voice. And the people in Milton want to keep Milton the way it is. We like the rural. If Mountain Green wants to build and blow up and put in, that's Mountain Green. That's what they want. If that's their area plan, if that's their desires, I fully support it. The people in Richville, Porterville, what do they want in their community? And so to remove that representation, to have that really putting a finger on the pulse of these areas, I find very valuable. But yet they're wanting to take that away. And so, I was not aware, as Debbie said, that it used to be all appointed at large all over the county. So what if they were all from Mountain Green? You know, it was a gentleman's agreement. Well, did they really hold to it? I don't know. I lived here 30 years ago and then moved away for a while and then came back because I loved what Morgan is, and you know, yes, growth is coming, but how do we direct that growth? Should be directed by the people through the plans, through the planning and zoning, and then hopefully respected by the county commission. I hope that you guys recommended negative, and I really hope and pray that the county commission will actually pay attention to this. Thank you.
Any more comments? Any motion to go out?
It's moved.
Motion by member Stevens.
Second.
And second by member Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
So we're out of public hearing. So what is?
So just for everyone's knowledge, the county commission is the elected body, and the people can elect whoever they want to the county commission. So if you disagree with what they're doing, then you can elect someone else. I think as a county, and as a planning commission who is appointed by the county commission, we should keep in mind that you aren't elected by the people. And so to say, well, they're not going to listen, I think they do listen, but there are certain ways that are more persuasive than others. And to say, well, we're just going to do whatever we want because they're going to do whatever they want, I don't think is helpful. So my suggestion is to open the lines of communication. The people in the community, they can call their county commissioners just as much as they can call their planning commissioners. I think that we just need to keep in mind that the things that have been said, if you feel that it's not happening the way it should, then reach out to your county commission. And I think more communication between the planning commission and county commission would be a really great thing. I did have a comment, and I'm going to try and pull up the map.
Yeah, what are the four?
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to try and connect my computer.
So it should say 4 voting districts.
5 including the city, is that correct?
Well,
Oh yeah, can you go to mine right there on the right? The right of the screen. Or just go over to the other side. Anyway, so these are I think the idea wasn't necessarily to take away representation. And so maybe the compromise here would be, it was to spread it out a little bit more, or at least, so these are the areas that are used and established by the lieutenant governor to divide the county by the registered voters. So that's what these are. And if you want to keep it a 7-member commission, then potentially you could do, 1 from each area and then still have 3 at large. And then that would disperse it throughout the county, but still allow, if people have an interest in being on the commission, they can apply or whatever, go through that process. And then there would still be 3 at large, so you wouldn't be reducing the number of people or planning commissioners that the public could reach out to, but it would at least somewhat divide according to the population, which I think was the intent.
So even doing that, what's the difference of just holding it from each area? I mean, you still got 7 people. So what's the difference of going 4 district and 3 at large? I don't see.
It would allow more opportunity for people, if they wanted to participate, they could apply. And so I don't know how many people, so what are the areas? We've got
Mountain Green, Peterson, Enterprise, Milton, Stoddard, Croydon, and Porterville.
And the largest would be Mountain Green, right? And how many there?
1,000, and smallest would be
Well,
Croydon.
largest in people, is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about? Or
People.
largest in
even-
land?
But even that, you got area 3, which would be Mountain Green, right?
No,
No, that goes up
That's
to,
Croydon. But see,
So
you're
Area
including the
1?
city, so population-wise, Area 3 is basically Croydon, a little bit. I think it's that Richville Lane it's cutting across.
I can't tell.
I can't tell, yeah.
You
Kind of
don't have
fuzzy.
a touchscreen.
Yeah, we
I
keep
wanna
wanting
do
to
that.
expand it.
It's kind of like West Morgan, East Morgan, Central Morgan.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's
Sorry, I'm
better. If you
trying to-
can
where do you want me to scroll to?
move it up, but when you got in closer, we can kind of see. Yeah. Because Mountain Green's
That's helping
divided,
at all.
you're splitting Mountain Green. So you got the west part of Mountain Green in one, and Peterson are combined, and I don't,
Where are you looking? Like, how can you see that? Is the
I'm
the
looking at the
41S, Where
subdivisions.
is that?
Okay,
Like, I
I
need
can
a
see the
landmark.
airport, and I can see Rollins Ranch, I can see Rollins Ranch over here.
In green?
Uh-huh.
Right,
Roll-
right above the
Rollins
three.
Ranch is where it says T colon 1-S, isn't it? Isn't that Rollins Ranch?
Yeah.
1-S? Okay.
And so you got the Cottonwoods, I'm just looking at the subdivisions, and you can see the airstrip, yeah.
So if you do it by precinct, it would theoretically, you could have two that were from Mountain Green. Because isn't 4-1 different than 2-1? I'm going by the
Yeah,
color.
it would be a green versus a gray, right?
Yes.
So they would get a green and a gray,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Right,
what-
Mountain Green, but then Peterson would be part of Mountain Green, because you see it's going below. So you've got Peterson down
saying the
here,
people
and,
that-
and
oh,
Enter,
The people that they could select.
In
You
Enterprise.
could select two people from Mountain Green.
you could, technically, yes, and none from Peterson and Enterprise, unless you went at large with 3.
But even going at large, the way this all works is people send in their application to run for it.
Right.
And typically, they have a hard time filling it anyways.
Right.
Well, yeah, yeah. But
And I think that was part of the reason to go to 5, but if you don't want to go to 5, you're making whatever recommendation you have, this is your opportunity to make it.
I know that they're the governing body, but it would be helpful to know exactly why they want to do this, so that when it comes to us, they can say, well, our reasoning behind this is what you said, is it has a hard time staffing at 7, so let's see what we think at 5. But we just get this here that tells us to look at it. We don't have any idea what they're really wanting out of it. Does that make sense? I feel like we
And
don't.
I'm just telling you what I know from the
Right,
discussion
but-
I heard. I don't know.
But that's
all the
what
reasoning.
I'm bringing up, is we receive these things, and then we're trying to read between the lines and figure out why we're receiving it. Where's the problem? You know, it would be nice if we knew
They would give us recommendations.
something. 'cause
Well, here's a
the findings.
here's a thought that I have is you could direct staff to draft an amendment that if the commission is directing staff, or that either body would come up with a synopsis of why they'd like to see whatever text amendment change
with findings, yeah.
with findings, and then wherever it originates, I mean, maybe it wouldn't be as necessary for planning commission because you'll make your recommendation, you'll have your findings there. But I think what you're saying is if it's coming from the county commission, you'd like to know why are they even having you look at it?
Yeah.
In other words,
So-
their findings.
Yeah, so what you could do is direct staff under our code to do a text amendment that says if a text amendment is initiated by the county commission shall provide a synopsis of, or a brief summary of the reasoning for it and what they would like your findings to be focused toward, or something like that.
I vote for that. How do we do that?
You have to, under our code, direct staff as a body, so you
We
would,
could take care of that in staff.
In business,
Business.
in
Yeah.
the meeting, we'll take care of that.
yeah,
Not during this item.
yeah,
No,
No, I understand that.
at the end of the meeting, we'll do
yeah.
it.
We'll do it during business
remember.
staff.
I'm just explaining that that's something, if that's a concern, you do have that power as a planning commission body under our code.
I just think that there's been a couple of topics tonight that, had that been given, would have addressed a lot of this.
And that might be, your reasoning to send to them of why you think if you make that direction to staff at the end of the meeting, that could be part of when you send it to them and recommend approval, you put that in there and then, hopefully they'll be able to understand where you're coming from.
So could we table this, then direct staff with a different request, ask for their findings, and then get that back?
No.
If you want, we can, a positive for this, or a negative for this, and with findings, we want it left the same, or we think there should be 7, but this is how we want 4 districted, 3 at large. I think for this one, we just need to decide what we want to recommend.
Okay, I have something to say. It has come to my attention that there was an executive session, and I know we can't talk about what happened in there, but I do know that Debbie was invited to that. So when things like that happen, and then there's no reason, they don't give us any reason for why they want things changed, like, there's no transparency. And then we feel the way that we're feeling. Frustrated, that we feel like we're not being heard or our opinions don't get taken into consideration. So now that I know about an executive session and I know that Debbie was in there, but nobody can talk about it, it's frustrating because now what's the ploy? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are they trying to sneak under our belts?
Well, they're not sneaking anything. It's obvious what they're requesting here.
But I think, to Member Stevens' point, if you did do a text amendment, then there would be some explanation. Because under our current code, neither of you have to give an explanation. You can just direct staff to, create a text amendment that will go through the process, the legislative process.
So on that, is it basically the first person to request it has to do it? So in other words, we couldn't put a different amendment, direct staff to put it in for them and postpone this one?
No, because
So it's a race, whoever does it first?
well,
We would never
it's
forward something to
yeah.
them.
I mean, they'll always get your recommendation, right, when you forward it. So it would probably just be for them to direct you or to give some summary. I think that would be the scope of your text amendment if you did that. But once again, that can be done later in the meeting. This is the
Yeah, we
this is the
direct
item.
staff to write it. We don't direct anything to the commission.
Can you bring that paragraph back up? I'm for 7. I like 7.
I like 7 too. I kind of did some research around the state, and only a couple counties have 5, and one's like Daggett County, which would make sense. And there's a couple that have 9, which is, I think, a little too much, a lot. But vast majority have 7, and most of them are at large. They're just appointed by the governing body. That's what it says.
I personally think we should keep 7, and it should follow the areas in our area, or in our general plan.
That's my feelings too. That's where I'm voting.
So are you gonna put that in like findings?
Yeah, one of the findings would be that we feel that the way it is represents the areas of the county.
If you could make a motion, get a second,
And then
list
attach
your findings, that would help out. This is kind of what happened with the Penrod. We had a discussion about the findings, and then they didn't make it in the motion, so.
Whoever makes a motion needs to include
Right,
findings.
so if you want to make a motion, second it, and then discuss the findings and get the findings laid out, then we can transcribe that and make sure that gets to the county commission.
But then we need to make a second motion with the findings.
That's why the findings kind of have to be identified
That's what I think
as we're
right
making
now.
the
If we
motion.
go through and do our findings and then put it part of our motion.
Could we have you write up our findings and then we can put that in our motion?
Yeah, Jeremy's,
Type it up.
Yeah, we could do that if that's how you want to
Jeremy's
handle it.
good.
I just don't want them forgotten again.
No, I appreciate
I-
your
I-
finding it there.
I'll stay on task this time. Okay,
So,
if
no,
anyone has a finding,
the first one is to leave it as 7-member because it represents the areas, how did you say it, with, and then.
That are in the general plan.
And then with the area plans. How to word it all, but.
So that it,
you need a finding,
what's
that's,
it called when,
Allow for representation.
There you go.
of the areas of the general.
yeah, it's to allow representation.
In my opinion, you should probably do a finding that talks about how it encourages people to be part of the government, in the area plans. I don't know what to think of area plans sometimes, but in the area plans, that's what people brought up. That's what they want in their community. So I think one of the findings should be to encourage citizen participation.
Or-
County
or the
government.
finding is it encourages citizen
Yeah, that's a
participation.
better way to put it. I agree.
And maybe the first one, we need to finish it. Move the planning commission at 7 members to allow for representation of the area plans. Right? Is that what
Of
you
the
said?
7 areas of the area plan.
To allow representation of the 7 area plans. That work?
7 areas in the area
Well,
plan.
I want it to be more than just the area plans. I want it to be worded like to encourage people to participate in
Okay,
their
that's-
government.
I think they're saying number 1.
Yeah,
Finding
number
number
2,
one.
you got
Okay,
it.
I got it.
Yeah, so we do what you're saying with 2.
That's good, yeah.
are you,
Allow for representation of each of the areas in the area plan.
I have a word for it, but I can't not think of it. I can't think of it. Not cohesive with the area plan. What's the word?
Consistent.
Consistent. Thank you. Number 1, the current 7-member commission allows for representation from each of the areas in the area plans, which is consistent with the general plan.
And I'd put 3, sorry, that moving it to 5 with each of the elected areas would open or allow for uneven representations such as Mountain Green having 2 representatives and Enterprise and Peterson having no representatives. with Enterprise and Peterson having no representation. Enterprise and Peterson.
No
No
representation.
representation.
Number 4, that the research that Debbie did is most counties have 7.
Just say most, yeah, counties.
Put Debbie down for research so they know where we come up with that. So it's not just.
I put 5 is that it doesn't account for the population of Morgan City. If they were to go by the precincts, then it would.
The voting areas.
Voting areas.
Voting areas, that it would then improperly balance things with Morgan City being accounted for
Population.
population.
I think if you put balanced after improperly, or wait a sec. Okay, maybe not. You're
That
fine.
one.
I see what you're saying.
Okay.
I think that should be plenty of findings.
Okay, so then ready for a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we forward a negative recommendation for item number 9, Planning Commission text amendment, to reduce the number of commissioners from 7 to 5 because of the findings.
With the following findings.
With the following findings. Number 1, the current 7-member commission allows for representation from each of the areas in area plans, which is consistent with the general plan. The current 7-member commission encourages citizen participation. Moving the commission to 5 allows for the possibility for there to be 2 area representatives in Mountain Green, resulting in Enterprise and Peterson having no representation. According to the research of member chair sessions, that was weird. Most counties have 7 members on their planning commissions. And the last one, that a change to the voting areas would be improperly, I still feel like it should be improperly balance.
Or you could say would improperly account for the population of Morgan City.
Would improperly account for the population in Morgan City. To be accounted, is that it?
Just it.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion by member Bass. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by member Miller. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, single-family dwelling unit demolition code text amendment.
The county commission directed staff to bring a text amendment forward that would allow for property owners who have a home on their property that would be demolished after another home is built on the property to be allowed. Currently, prior to the detached accessory dwelling unit text amendment, this would not have been allowed. We have had several requests since I got here to allow for a home to be constructed, and then they would demo the prior existing home after it's completed. The text amendment that's proposed would provide a tool for individuals to do that, where we would collect a bond to make sure the house is demolished afterwards, if that's how they want to proceed.
How does the county enforce the demolition?
It'd be through an affidavit. They would have to submit a bond and an affidavit stating that the county would have authority to come on to the property after a certain period of time if the home was not demolished. And then we would use the amount of money that is posted for the bond to do that.
Can you go over the bond thing again? I know we talked about it at Como Springs, but just a refresher.
So the bond is kind of like a subdivision bond. After you approve a final plat, they can post a bond, and that bond is supposed to cover 110% of the total cost of the infrastructure. This would be like that. The property owner would post a bond with the county in the amount of the demolition. We would hold on to that money until after the house is constructed and the second house is demolished. If it's demolished within that time period, we would refund the money, and so that's where the bond comes in.
So the bond is just money.
The bond is just money, and it is to make sure that the home that is to be demolished gets
Right.
demolished.
So, but let me pose a theoretical question. So let's say I'm making it up, $10,000 to demolish a house. I'm sure it's much more than that. I put up that bond, and then I change my mind and say, nope, never mind, I don't want to demolish the second house. Sure, the county can keep the money, but can the county actually go and demolish it if I were to not allow them?
That would be part of the affidavit and the agreement with the property owner when they post the bond. Yeah.
That was my question.
The only way we would not go on the property and demolish the house is, one, if it's safe. A lot of times, and in one of the instances that was brought to us, there's issues with the home where it might not be safe for habitation and they need to get started on the other home. So this would solve that issue for that property owner. The other time that we would not go on is if the home that existed prior to them building the second home meets all the requirements for a detached accessory dwelling.
But in that case, because the ordinance passed, you would know that before this takes place.
That's correct. And if that's the case and they have no desire to demolish it, or if they want to demolish it, we wouldn't care because it meets all the requirements of the detached accessory dwelling unit. This just provides another tool.
Any more questions?
There'll be some lots, right, that's not big enough to house two homes, but you could relocate one, and while you're doing it, live in your one, build a one, and then tear your one down. So
That's correct.
that's the benefit of this, is if your lot's not big enough, then you could.
Yeah,
Have to have a second lot to move it to.
Or your detached accessory dwelling unit is limited by the size of your initial structure, so if you wanted to build a bigger home than the one you're gonna demolish, it provides that option.
Or you could build a bigger home and then make the smaller home a detached dwelling.
Yeah, but that.
if they meet all the setbacks and the lot
No, I
coverage
get
and things
that.
like that, yeah. But, if they need a place to live, this would make it so they don't have to rent a hotel while the house is constructed or whatever. They could live in the existing structure, build the new one, demolish the old.
Any more questions? Have a motion to go into public hearing.
Second.
Have a motion by member Miller and a second by member Stevens to go into public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're in public hearing. Public would like to comment?
That we go out of public hearing.
Motion by member Miller to go out of public and a second by member Stevens. All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Any more questions? Not ready for a motion?
So, before we do, I think timing ought to be addressed. I like what they've got here, but time for construction of second structure, time for demolition to occur after completion of the new dwelling, there's nothing there to say what that timing is.
I think the applicant states the timing, or
No, that would be handled in the affidavit, so they would have to give us a time frame of when the house would be constructed and how long after they need to line up the demolition crew and things like that, and then we would hold them to the time frame in the affidavit.
We're talking
Why,
like months
why
or-
can't we issue that?
Well, the way I
Well-
would say it is some homes may take longer to demolish or to build, and
Not demolition. I can go for that building, but not demolition. A guy can come in with a track hoe and that home's down in a day. So demolition time
say
is.
demolition no later than X,
I just think personally that within, I mean, once you got CO or your occupancy, right? You're moving your stuff in. So within a couple days, the house is cleaned out and gone. That within a month's time, that house should be done and gone.
If that's the recommendation change you want to make to it, I can get that put in there for the.
I just think that you need that because people run with whatever freedom you give them. So part of the affidavit is you got 30 days for that house to be demolished. That's just my recommendation.
I would make that a finding, and make add that to your motion as a possible change.
And then wasn't they're supposed to submit how much it would cost to have it demolished too?
Yep, that would be based on a quote that they would get and provide.
Provide, yeah. So I think is that in here? I read it someplace, I don't know.
I thought I had it in there. If
You
it's
did,
not,
I
then
remember reading
so
it.
it's 1C, cost of the demolition cash assurance bond submitted to the county for review by the building official and zoning administrator. So it would have to pass Josh and Dave. So the
For
quote,
them to say it's realistic.
yeah, so it can't just be a quote that's not realistic.
Yeah, because you don't want to have a $15,000 demolition and bond it for $5.
I certainly don't want to deal with that fallout. You're right.
So can we increase the 110% just because of the nature of the way our economy's going? 110%, would that cover you in a year's time?
So it's,
The 100. I mean, there's no statutory requirement for it to be increased or decreased. It's up to you if you want me to increase that.
I guess just from my thinking is it's as long as you comply with what you said, you're getting your money back, right?
Well, I don't want to cash the bond. That's the thing.
That's what I mean. As long as whoever the applicant is, if they bond whatever we set, they're going to get that money back in the end if they comply.
That's correct.
So why not, I mean, don't gouge them, but cover ourselves also so that the county doesn't eat it.
I guess the way I see it though is that the more you increase, the more upfront cost you're going to cost the property owner. And they may have a certain amount that they've budgeted for the new home. You know what I'm saying? So
I agree. That's why I say you don't want to gouge them, but at the same token, 110% isn't very much with what we're living in right now.
You do that, they would have to get a bid from, or for demolition, and that bid would specify how long it's good for, and if that period expired, they would have to get a new bid and then increase, or adjust the bond accordingly.
if you want to put that in, that the bids are only good for so long,
Yeah,
it's
possible.
just, the more you put in, the harder it is for me to enforce and regulate. If you want to increase it to 120%, I mean, we can do that. What's the break off between gouging and not?
I agree,
So-
but the problem is it's taking you a year to build a house. And so in a year's time, you keep getting cost increases.
I know several houses in the county that have taken longer than a year to build.
Yeah, and I agree.
So
But a
I'm-
year's pretty close with, I mean, it could be longer too, but
Yeah,
as most homes, you can have them up in about a year.
the 110, I don't know that there's a state statute on demolitions, but as far as just cash assurance, that's typically what it is for improvements. And so I think that that's the reason it was put in like this. But a lot of that can be mitigated by 1C because whatever their demolition cash assurance, it's going to be reviewed by the building official and zoning administrator. And if they look at it and they say, that's kind of on the low side, you need to put up X amount more, and then it'll add that 10% on top. There is going to be some quality control that can be done through, but if you want to put it to 120 or whatever it is, I was just going to throw out that the 110% is the standard for infrastructure, and I think that's where that number came from.
So can I complicate it again, Deb?
Give it a try.
What ends if you just said if it exceeds like a year period that they would have, or that it allows that to be adjusted? So they can have, if the bond is $10,000, if it goes beyond a year for construction, then the county can have the prerogative to adjust it based on inflation.
I wouldn't recommend that. I mean, they're coming into us, they're submitting an affidavit, they're submitting the 110% upfront, and then they're going through their building permit review. They're paying their building permits, which is also thousands of dollars, and then they're constructing the home. And sometimes they can't control how long it takes for that house to go up. And I don't think it would be fair to then increase the amount of the demolition because they have issues
But
with.
here's the other thing with it too, though, right? Is they're gonna have to have most people's gonna have a loan, right? And so part of that loan's the demolition of the house. So.
I'm not sure you can roll in a demolition of a house as part of your home construction loan. I mean, it's completely separate.
They won't let you?
Yeah, I don't think they're
Well,
allowed, they allow that.
You can hide it too.
Put it as a contingency.
Yeah,
Definitely one is for B1B, that the demolition is to occur 30 days after,
yeah,
within 30 days after,
yeah, once they've been issued occupancy.
within 30 days after completion of the new building,
Well,
or
but-
occupancy.
Yeah, you wanna put down occupancy, that they've been issued occupancy.
After the occupancy.
And I'm fine with the 110, I just was posing it to make sure that we were covered, so I don't have a problem with it.
We wanna just spell out that if they miss that 30-day window, that the county can proceed with demolition in any period.
My recommendation is that instead of we immediately proceeding, that we go through the standard enforcement process, and we send them a courtesy notice of enforcement to give them notice that we will be coming onto their property at a certain time and cashing the bond to do the demo. It will build in an additional 30 days for them to get the demolition done, just in case they've run into some other issues. That would be my recommendation.
So they could have up to 60.
Yeah, 30 days, but after that, you're gonna get a notice of enforcement.
And then it's coming in.
Because the county would hope to not demo it.
I really have no desire to cash a bond. I really don't.
No, nobody would, but you have someone that'll push the system.
You're right, and that's why we have it in place.
Can we put that in the findings and just,
We'll make the
or I
amendment.
guess, do we need to put that in the findings that it would go through the additional?
Yes,
process for enforcement period?
put it in the findings as part of your motion as well, because I'll amend the text to include another subsection stating just that.
Like a C.
It's B1B.
To include
Demolition
30
is
days.
to, the demolition is to occur, shall occur within 30,
Be
within,
completed.
to be completed, or,
They can be either started or completed.
Well, the demolition shall be completed within 30 days, or a letter will be received from the county stating within the next 30 days they will take care of it. However you want.
after
I would
Within 30
occupancy.
days
I
of
would-
issuance of the certificate of occupancy.
Within 30 days of occupancy,
Of C of O.
a C of O.
And then period, if that does not occur, then planning department shall initiate enforcement procedures as outlined in section, and then I'll find the section number. I don't remember them anymore. They changed.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead if you want to.
So we can do a motion only.
Can we just say with the amendment that Jeremy wrote? Madam, are you even with this?
Well, he's getting the Morgan County Code.
Or you could just put as the finding is inserting.
Well, he's getting it. Okay. With the finding, yeah, get back to the finding. You're throwing us all for a loop.
Madam Chair, I move we forward a positive recommendation to the County Commission for the revision of, to Morgan County Code Section 155.312 to add language into the Morgan County Code to allow property owners to build a new home, then demolish an existing home upon completion of the second home based on the text listed in the Exhibit A of the staff report with the following amendment. To amend B1B, that the demolition shall be completed within 30 days of certificate of occupancy. If that does not occur, then the planning department shall initiate enforcement procedures as outlined in Morgan County Code, section,
Or you just say as outlined in Morgan County Code.
Yeah. Okay, I have a
Second.
motion by member Bass and a second by member Miller. Any more discussion? All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Motion carries. And last item. We have the proposed sprinkler ordinance.
Item number 11 on tonight's agenda is a legislative action. Morgan County Fire Department proposes an ordinance adding residential fire sprinkler system requirements to Title 15, Chapter 152, Fire Prevention and Protection. The County Commission heard this item in a meeting for discussion on December 19, and they voted unanimously to bring this for a discussion and decision for a recommendation from this body before they made a decision to approve it. Yield my time to the fire department manager.
Good late evening. So for those who don't know me, I'm Boyd Kerrigan, the non-elected fire chief. And just to be sure, I'm not for growth. I didn't write the code and I didn't vote for the code. So I'm just here tonight to talk to you about sprinkler ordinance. So Morgan County's been rapidly increasing in new construction in large homes and all these mega outbuildings throughout the county. And our public water systems are just not keeping up with the growth. So the new trend will increase the fire department's fire loads and demands on our county's existing fire department and public water systems, lessening the ability to extinguish fires. Compounding on the issue, the Morgan County Bureau of Fire Prevention is asked to follow the county-adopted IFC code. We have a real issue with our public water systems and not keeping up with the need for fire flow and storage for life safety, fire protection for these larger and larger homes being built in the county. The new state code 15A-5-203, effective 5/3 of 23, states, in order to comply, the county must adopt its own sprinkler ordinance. Therefore, it is the intent of the Morgan County Bureau of Fire Prevention to work with the Morgan County Planning Commission toward a sprinkler ordinance, one that would be appropriate and adopted by the Morgan County Commission and would allow us to meet our county adopted IFC codes. So why are we doing this? So more and more applicants are asking to build in areas of the county where an approved water supply capable of supplying the required fire flow for fire protection cannot be established because of cost, location, or lack of water. So to negotiate the ability to allow these property owners to construct these types of structures in areas of the county where no approved fire flow for fire protection and keeping cost effect in mind, we started to allow these people to put sprinklers in their homes in lieu of an approved fire flow system for fire flow. So I'll just give you a couple examples. So if we use a home being constructed in an area of the county where a public water system is in place with hydrants and 120,000 gallons of water storage. So IFC states fire flow for 1 and 2 family dwellings, 0 to 36,000 square feet is 3,600 square feet. 1,000 GPM for 1 hour is 60,000 gallons of fire flow. So this would meet our IFC code, no sprinklers needed. The same home, 3,600 square feet to 4,800 square feet, IFC code states required fire flow for 1 and 2 family dwellings, 3,601 to 4,800 square feet home is 1,750 GPM for 2 hours, which is 210,000 gallons of fire flow. So this would not meet our IFC codes because the fire storage is only 120,000 gallons. So if we look at the IFC code section 903.3.13 or section P2904 of the International Residential Code, it states if an approved sprinkler system is installed, the fire flow and storage can be cut in half. So if we take that same home, if we cut that in half, now we're only at 875 GPM for 1 hour, which is 52,500 gallons of fire flow. Now it meets code. So this is what the issue we're having is these homes are getting bigger and bigger, and we just don't have the fire storage or the water storage to meet IFC code, which we have adopted. So in order to continue, we need to adopt our own sprinkler ordinance. Questions? There's a lot to this.
So this is for homes that don't have any other water source.
According to IFC code, we have to meet fire flow for fire protection on homes.
I want to disclose, I do have, I don't view it as a conflict, but I'm building a home right now, and I'm required to put in a sprinkler system. So I learned if I disclose it, then it's fine if I did talk about it. I was told, can't have a fire hydrant across the road doesn't count. You can't have a water tank that doesn't count. You can't have a well that doesn't count. You can't, or anything, it has to be a sprinkler system. So it is basically making it a sprinkler system. That's already the state code without having to, or any of our sprinkler, or any adopted code.
This is the state code that's just been copied. The state code just says that the county has to adopt.
So it'd be the exact same thing as what the
So
state
it
code
is, yeah, I mean, we're taking the state code and adopting it as a county. That are,
Yep.
Good evening. Just so those of you that don't know me, my name's Dave Vickers. I'm actually a state employee, but I've been, through a cooperative agreement, been assigned to Morgan County, working with Morgan County as a fire warden. So my primary responsibility is wildland fire for the county. I'm responsible for all the wildland fires in Morgan County. However, related to the sprinkler thing, to give you a little background, I've been involved with the state legislature on the creation of the sprinkler ordinances and stuff. And basically what it really is it's a tool to allow construction to be done in places where it's just not economically feasible to put in water tanks and 8-inch water lines to supply hydrants and that kind of stuff. So me as a fire guy will tell you, give me hydrants and stuff and I will be a happy camper. But sometimes it's just not economically feasible to do that. So in discussion with the legislature, the Home Builders Association, and the Building Code Commission, and I've been on the Code Analysis Committee for the last 12 years. Every 3 years we update the codes and go through that. So what we came up with is what the sprinkler ordinance is designed to do is to be able to allow, because basically you're not in a unique position. Most of the rural counties in the state of Utah are in the same issue, water supply. And in the fire service, we look at water as gold. We want water, and there's really two threats that we have to worry about in the fire service. We have being the wildland guy, of course, my big concern is the threat of the wildland fires impacting the development, the homes, the communities, those kind of things. But we also have to protect the community from our structures and our homes from them catching on fire, then spreading out from there. And that's really what your hydrants and fire flows is protecting, to keep the fire confined to that structure. So if we don't have the hydrants, we have to look at the structure as fuel. It's a fire risk. The building burns, it's a risk to the public safety of the community. So we as a fire department trying to contain, to be in all honesty, especially in rural things, our goal when we get there is to keep the fire contained to the initial structure and not spreading to the neighbors through getting into vegetation, whatever the case, trying to contain it to that one area. So in order to do that, we looked at different options. Yes, we want water tanks and hydrants, but if it's not economically feasible to do that, the state has allowed local entities, because if we don't have a sprinkler ordinance, we're going to have to require the fire flows, which means our really only options is water tanks and hydrants and water supplies, which may not be feasible. And that's what we ran into in other parts of the state, where we're not going to build anymore because it's not, we subdivide into a minor subdivision, a couple homes and everything. Can you really afford cost effective put 100,000 gallon tank and hydrant system in there for a couple homes? Now it's different if we're building a subdivision and use the planning commission, approve subdivisions, and those are involved in developmental costs, and you require those kind of things for subdivision. But occasionally there's times where we know they're not going to be a position where we're going to put in a municipal water supply. So the sprinkler ordinance gives us that option. But the state did require that the state didn't come in and mandate. That's one of the concessions that we worked with the legislature. Because let's be honest, most of the legislatures are developers. And if they had it their way, we'd have no codes at all. In fact, we had a legislature bring that up a couple of years ago saying, let's just do away with codes altogether. But luckily that didn't go through. But so they allow that if we want to use that as a tool, as an option to allow some development to continue, they allow the counties to adopt sprinkler ordinances. And that's what we're after, is to give us as a tool into our toolbox to provide for public safety for both the community but also for the homeowner that build that structure too. The thing about a residential sprinkler system, for those of you that don't know about it, they're designed different than what we put into a commercial occupancy. They're designed on quick response heads that flow 13 gallons a minute. Just remember that 13 gallons a minute, when we flow our fire hose off of a fire truck, we're flowing in excess of 200 gallons a minute. So when we go and open our hose line inside a burning home, we're flowing better than 200 gallons a minute with each hose line. Whereas a sprinkler home, residential sprinkler design, they're designed on theoretically, and they've demonstrated that they do work the majority of the time. 2 heads go off 26 gallons a minute. We have time to get there and confine the fire to the single room and contents. That's what the goal of the sprinkler system in a residential structure is for. So that's what we're after, is another tool that we can allow some of these homes that are becoming actually fairly large, creating large fire loads, because a lot of people are building good sized homes, and give a chance that the home and the homeowner's home will survive that incident. So that's what the goal is. So any questions on that? Like I say, I've been involved in the sprinkler negotiations with the legislature and the state building commission and stuff, and this is what we felt was the best compromise, and the building homeowners association people went with this, and the legislature approved it to allow us as a community to have that option. So if an incident does happen, we'll confine it to hopefully just that single room, keep the home not burning to the ground and not impacting the community. And these day and ages, it's getting to be a bigger and bigger issue. You know, I mean, I have to look 2 years ago in Boulder, Colorado on December 30th, they had a fire that burned over 1,000 homes in the snow, in the winter. So even though it's winter time, we still have threats that can spread. But that's what the purpose of why we want to adopt a sprinkler ordinance, so we can continue to allow people to build, but also do it reasonably. And like I say, we brought up about the 3,600 square feet, homes under 3,600 square feet, it allows us to not require the sprinklers. And the big thing where that magic number comes from in developing the international code that we do every 3 years, we review those, it has to do with fire loading. Homes under 3,600, generally, the fire department, and Morgan's equipped to do that between the water tenders that we have, that the fire load and the fire conditions that we have, homes that size, we have a good chance of confining it with what we show up with. Things larger than that, we really want them hydrants and some sort of water supply so that we have a fighting chance. Hopefully that explains a little bit about the background of how this whole system worked and how it came about.
Thank you. Ready? Motion to go into public hearing. Well, are you done, Boyd?
So moved.
Motion by Member Bass, second by Member Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Sleeping. You're slow.
Any public comment at this time?
I moved to go out of public hearing.
Motion to go out by Member Bass, and a
Second.
second by Member Stevens. All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. We're out of public hearing. Any questions for Boyd?
I had one for Garrett.
Garrett?
I wasn't quite sure if I understood it. Is it that we can be as broad as the state code, or we can do whatever, do we have to follow the state code? That was what I wasn't able to.
The more restrictive typically applies. So the state code says that we should be following the 2021 IFC, but they don't mandate which appendices we adopt. But our code has adopted many of the appendices.
Yeah, let me make sure I understand. So or other than the appendices, you couldn't go broader than the state code, but you could go narrower. Is that
Yeah.
what I understand? So one is state code and then I think the other. Okay.
The IFC, though, does give some discretion to the fire code official or the authority having jurisdiction to apply the IFC more, just has discretion. So if they say, you know, you can't have a street longer than 750 feet, like a road, that can be extended or even shortened based on terrain. And so if you're going straight up a hill, it's like, well, maybe we only want 250 feet street, you know, from a turnaround. So there is a little bit of wiggle room that the authority having jurisdiction has within the IFC. But if we wanted to eliminate that wiggle room, we could make it more strict. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's wiggle room to broaden it too based on terrain, but we probably couldn't say, you know, you can have a mile long dead end road. You know, we couldn't go that far because then it's outside of the authority having jurisdiction's discretion.
So a home that is 3,600 square feet or bigger has the option to do sprinklers.
Yeah.
You have to.
So the fire flow
Yeah, it's picking it up.
is determined by the size of the house. The fire flow doesn't eliminate, or sprinklers don't eliminate fire flow requirements, it just cuts it in half. And so,
Yes.
for an example, if there's only 120,000 gallons of fire storage, and you have a big home that requires a higher fire flow, then
So,
that it can cut it in
what
half.
we're saying is under 3,600 feet, we can manage the fire flow with what the fire department carries. Over 3,600, and there's not a municipal water supply, there's not a water tank, 8-inch
Right.
lines, that to allow the home to be built to meet fire code requirements, they would need to sprinkler the home. So the sprinklers
Well-
are giving the option of homes over 3,600 that are not in an area that it's economically feasible to put in the water.
That's my question, is who decides that?
That's what
The
they're
ordinance.
If they
This is
go in
with
the
the
planning
ordinance.
commission, yeah, when somebody comes in for development, and let's say it's a 3-lot minor subdivision, 3 homes, so use the planning commission, say, well, the fire flow requirement's gonna require 120,000 gallon storage tank, 8-inch water lines, and so many hydrants. The 500 feet maximum distance in a residential, whatever. And the people, let's say it's a family subdividing, and turns out and say, well, that's gonna cost us $1 million to put in that water system. So for 3 homes that you don't project gonna be a 20-home subdivision in the future, this gives them the option that they can build those homes by sprinkler and not have to put in that $1 million. And just so you know, for general things, right now, a non-constructed home it's about $1 to $3 per square foot to put in a sprinkler system. To retrofit, it doubles that. It's about $2 to $7 a square foot to go retrofit. And the thing about a residential sprinkler system also is it's not as thorough as a commercial one. You don't sprinkler attic space, you don't have to sprinkler as much. And then the other thing that's nice about a residential sprinkler, especially in the rural thing, is, for example, if your home's supplied by a well, there are not very many people that have wells that can support a fire flow with the well. However, how the sprinkler system works, because of the way there is you put in, really, it's an oversized water heater, 500-gallon tank in the garage or in the basement, whatever. That's your water supply. And so, because remember, the sprinkler head goes off with 13 gallons a minute, and we base it on 2, so basically 26 gallons a minute. So you also reduce some of the requirements that way. So we can actually, build homes way up in, out of area, some big cabins that are actually pretty big, that are able to be built because you can do a residential sprinkler system. So this is just giving you that option.
And we don't actually make the decision. When a subdivision that comes forward, we have our fire marshal and our fire chief that will make the recommendation to us. So we don't make that
Yeah,
call.
with that particular one. So when you say 3,600, does that count like on a home with a basement? So total footage of home, or are you looking at main level?
You're looking at finished space.
It's finished space? Yeah, space that can be finished. Right.
And to give you kind of an idea, Haley, usually it's about 30 to 50,000 equivalent in a normal system.
Madam Chair, I move we forward a positive recommendation to the County Commission for the revision to Morgan County Code adding residential fire sprinkler system requirements to Title XV, I don't know that number, Chapter 152 from the draft ordinance, January 11th, 2024.
Motion by Member Bass. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Member Wilson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
I'm opposed.
I am too.
Okay, we have. So we have
Well,
two,
let's hear your
two.
discussion.
I will vote again. Second time tonight, break the tie. I'll vote yay. Did you see who was against? Okay.
Do you want to hear my discussion? Haley? Or is it too late?
It's
Too late. I'm just looking at the clock. Okay. Now is the time for business staff questions. Let's take care of Devin's motion first. Get that out of the way.
Remind me what my motion was.
I can't, that's why I said
It's
your
so
motion.
long.
No, what we want to do,
It was basically getting if the county is asking us to consider a text amendment, we want to have their.
findings of why.
The staff has to provide a summary, or we requesting the staff provide a summary of the county, or the commission's reasons or findings for.
I think
asking us-
request
So-
that the commission provide the summary, because the staff may not know
Yeah, so-
why the commission wants
Yeah,
to do it.
this is for the county commission to provide findings of why we're wanting to make the change, so we know what we're up against, not staff. And then he would
What
put
problem
it
we're
in.
trying to fix.
Yeah.
Right, I just thought we had to direct staff to do it, so however you say it.
No,
I'm
we're
perfectly
directing staff to write the text
fine. Okay,
that will make the county commission
okay.
give us findings of why the text amendment.
Out of curiosity, do we decide that, or does that also get passed to them?
Oh, they'll have to decide it.
Oh,
So
the
you'll
legislative
recommend
body,
it to them.
Okay.
you would make the recommendation based on the text that comes to you, and then they're the decision body.
They might throw it out, but they might honor it. At least it gives us a chance to.
But when you send it to them, you can give your reasonings why you think it's a good idea to say, well, we've gotten a few that we didn't understand why it was coming, or if there was anything in particular we were supposed to weigh. So,
You understand the motion?
I do.
Okay. We have a motion. We need to vote on it, whether we agree to give that direction.
Do we need to do we want to put findings, or is this where we? put
No,
the
you would
findings?
just direct staff to do it.
And that was the
then
motion.
Make the vote, and then I will bring it back.
And then we'll put findings if we need to.
Second.
So I have a motion by Member Miller and a second by Member Bass. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Now Haley. Your turn.
Oh, you want me to do that right now?
Well,
Or do you have something?
there's an issue with that. Since it's a public hearing, which is noticed for a public hearing, once that public hearing is closed and a motion is made and forwarded to the county commission, we can't reopen it as part of staff comments. We would have had to renotice the whole meeting again, so you could insert your recommendations. That's my understanding of the open meeting law, and Garrett can speak to that.
so I was asked to look into this, and so it has to be, well, I'll just read this, or maybe I'll share it again. I'll just share the screen.
Well, we didn't list them out one by one in the motion.
No, we discussed them.
We did
didn't
it on
include it in the
second
motion.
We did, which was what? Was that flag lots that we did?
Yeah.
While Garrett is looking that up, my recommendation would be for you to email the county commission within the next couple days that list of findings, and in that email to the county commission, just say this is what was meant to be attached to the motion. It doesn't have to be, I mean, you can comment and contact the county commission directly, But something like this, where you want to actually attach it to a previous motion that was made, you'd have to reopen the public hearing, which would require us to renotice.
So can we just make an email from the planning commission and send to them right
Yep.
now?
Yeah, you could.
Forget the,
If you wanna draft an email right now and send it to them, or draft it tomorrow.
I
that
think we
would-
just do one and have one person send it and be done.
I believe Haley's the one that
Do
put
that.
together the findings and gave them to Debbie, so if you want to appoint her to send it, you could do that.
I appoint Shane to send the email.
Oh, yeah, I have a hard time sending my own.
Yes, I can do that.
And so this is just kind of FYI. So this is Open Meetings Act 524202 6A. Public notice that is required to include an agenda under Section 1 shall provide reasonable specificity to notify the public as to the topics to be considered at the meeting. Each topic shall be listed under an agenda item on the meeting agenda. And so since the findings weren't listed as an agenda, right, it's not something that, well, it is something that could be brought up. So that's what B says. Subject to 6C, at the discretion of the presiding member of the public body, a topic raised by the public may be discussed during an open meeting, even if the topic raised by the public was not included in the agenda or advance public notice for the meeting. But then it says, except as provided in subsection 5, which is an emergency meeting, which this isn't. Relating, a public body may not take final action on a topic in an open meeting unless the topic is listed under the agenda item and included with advance public notice required by the section. So,
So if we did not have a public hearing, this would not apply. Let's say that it was a administrative item, then we could reconsider it
With
without.
24-hour notice.
if
24-hour
it
notice
was
to
on the
who?
agenda
Yeah.
to the public.
To the public.
If we had
Because
noticed
Open
that-
Meetings Act is all about transparency, and so you can't bring something up and vote on it if it's something that wasn't noticed.
Even if we're not changing the vote on the motion, we're just amending it to add findings.
That's right. But you can still communicate that by sending it directly to the commission. It's just not something that you can vote on as a public body because it wasn't noticed within the 24 hours.
That's correct. The applicants of that application did not receive notice that you were going to do that. And because it's a legislative item, it would have taken another renotice of the 10 days.
Well, that's why I wanted to do it, is so that they were clear about why we voted to deny it.
I think they were clear on the discussion that occurred.
What findings have you wrote?
Just the ones that I
down
sent
some
in
more?
the message. That it doesn't fit with the current zoning area. And the reason I said that is because 1 acre makes sense across the road where it just goes up the mountain, but it doesn't make sense on the east side of the canal. And if we go to RR1, it's just gonna open up all of Morgan Valley to be RR1. And then, going along with that one, if we were to do that, it wouldn't end up meeting our rural lifestyle that we.
Right, the other one we were gonna put in that doesn't conform with the,
Oh,
Well,
it's
she can't
subject-
represent the planning commission. I kind of want to know what she's going to be putting in there. We won't vote.
We're not voting on
We're not going to
anything.
vote on it.
Yeah, you
We're
can't
just-
vote on it, but under the discretion of Chair Sessions, you can talk about it.
And
But
she
yeah, you
can
can't.
just send it to the
And she will
county
send it.
commission.
But You said you
I was gonna
remembered
say,
when
it doesn't conform.
But it's not coming from the planning commission because you're not voting on
Right,
it. It's
right.
just coming from
I wanna make
member
sure we
Bass.
all know
But each of
what's-
you could send your own email saying, hey,
I
here,
see.
here's what we think about it.
it didn't conform, would you
To
say,
the county, or the, not the county plan,
on the general?
general plan, not the.
zoning map,
the-
future land use
The
map.
future land use, or each of the area map, or the area zone,
Oh, the area plan.
area plan, that's the word I was looking for, yes, area plan. It's too late, sorry.
I just want to make sure we all know what was going to be in that.
So I could send those 3 items. It's
Mhm.
from me on behalf of the planning commission.
It's not on behalf of the planning commission because you can't vote on it. But as a member of the planning commission, you're providing more insight into the formal recommendation that the planning
These
commission
findings were
prior-
left out of
prior
our
gave.
motion. You can say something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Haley. Any more business? I'm looking at you. Okay, minutes. Do I have a
I
motion
move to
then?
approve.
Second.
Motion by member Bass and a second by member Stevens. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So moved.